Chapter 1049. Su'er was furious indeed. This time, he had attacked personally with the help of the Black Demon Tengu tribe. He had thought that victory was in his grasp, but Lin Sun had repeatedly escaped his pursuit in the past few days. It was hard for him to believe. Until this time, he was even tricked by Lin Sun. Not only did he suffer heavy injuries, he also lost face. How could he tolerate this? He was sure that the news of his injuries would spread throughout the Mabai province in less than a day. Little bastard, you're dead this time. If Su'er had attacked Lin Sun previously because he wanted to avenge the juniors of his sect, he was now in a difficult position. Only by killing Lin Sun could he save his lost face. Of course, more importantly, he was now sure that Lin Sun had more than one saint treasure on him. Not to mention a king like him. Even a sage would be tempted by such a temptation. However, in the following chase, the situation had changed. Lin Sun escaped into different cities, and every time he entered a city, he would kill the Black Demon Tengu tribe powerhouses in the city. In this way, Su'er lost his eyes and ears, and his pursuit was hindered. It didn't take long for him to lose track of Lin Sun. This made him so angry that he almost went crazy. At the same time, in the Mabai province, the news of Demon God Lin being wanted by the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure caused a great uproar and heated discussion. It had to be known that a few days ago, the Wind Whisperer clan had just released a new prodigy influence list. The news of Demon God Lin wreaking havoc in the White Jade capital was ranked first on the list. He had received the attention of the entire East Triumph domain. Now, Demon God Lin had appeared in the Mabai province and created a feud with the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. How could people not be shocked? What is Demon God Lin trying to do? After causing havoc in the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land and the Heavenly Sword sect in the White Jade capital, is he going to cause havoc in the Mabai province? Many cultivators clicked their tongues. They thought that Lin Sun was too cruel, as if there was no force in the world that he didn't dare to offend. When the news of Su'er, a king, being severely injured in Birch Sand City spread, the entire Mabai province was in an uproar. Su'er was a king in the second tribulation of longevity. He was not an ordinary person, but he was actually injured. This was sufficient to cause any cultivator to be unable to maintain their calm. This Su'er is already so old. As a senior, if she went to kill Demon God Lin, it would seem like she was bullying the young and damaging her character. But now, she went for wool and came home shorn. Instead, she was injured by Demon God Lin. This Su'er can be considered an important figure in the numinous Treasure Saint land, but now, she can't even keep her chastity. What a pity. When he heard these comments, Su Kong was so angry that he almost vomited blood. To him, there was nothing more malicious than the words losing his integrity in old age. This also made him more determined to kill Lin Sun. He looked for Lin Sun's traces everywhere like a madman. When the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure heard the news, it was speechless and annoyed. It felt a little embarrassed, so it secretly dispatched a lot of forces to help Su'er's search for Lin Sun. However, they probably didn't expect that Lin Sun was currently gorging on dog meat with Xiao Qinghe. Moreover, they were in a deep gorge that was less than 1,500 kilometers away from Sanqing Mountain. The bonfire was blazing, and a huge black dog leg was skewered on the grill. It was burnt to a golden brown and flowed with oil. The rich meat fragrance caused Xiao Qinghe to be unable to help but swallow his saliva. Beside him, the ground was already covered with bones that had been completely gnawed. But at this moment, he still felt that he could gorge on it for another 300 rounds. The reason was that the black dog meat was simply too delicious. The meat was chewy and plump, and the taste could be said to be superb when some seasoning and salt were smeared on it. Didn't you say that you wouldn't eat black dog meat, even if you were beaten to death? Lin Sun focused on grilling the black dog leg and casually ridiculed Xiao Qinghe. Xiao Qinghe chuckled like a scoundrel. Isn't it still alive? Truthfully speaking, although this black dog meat isn't presentable, its taste is truly wonderful. At the end of his sentence, he couldn't help but smack his lips. He couldn't wait to look at the golden, greasy black dog leg on the grill. Not long after, Lin Sun separated the roasted black dog legs and gave one to Xiao Qinghe. Both of them didn't say anything more and buried themselves in eating. When he couldn't hold it in any longer, Xiao Qinghe patted his stomach as he looked at the flowing clouds and the horizon, and he sighed faintly with emotion. How comfortable! Wouldn't it be a blessing if I could have black dog meat accompanying me every single day while I cultivate? As long as you're not afraid of being hunted down by the Black Sea Tengu race, you can fulfill your wish at any time. Lin Sun glanced at him. He didn't expect him to be a foodie. Speaking of which, how long do we have to stay here? Asked Xiao Qinghe. There's no hurry. Doesn't the numinous treasure, Holy Land, want to put me on the wanted list? It's impolite not to reciprocate. Before I leave, I have to give them a big gift. Lin Sun got up and looked into the distance with his dark eyes. A great gift. Xiao Qinghe was stunned, and then a wisp of extraordinary splendor suddenly flashed in his eyes. He's here! At this moment, Lin Sun's figure flashed and disappeared. In the distant sky, a group of disciples of the numinous treasure Holy Land that wore apricot-yellow Taoist robes flashed through the sky, and they flashed towards Wu Ling City. The person in the lead was a handsome man with an imposing figure. His black hair hung loosely on his shoulders, a white jade belt around his waist, and inky cloud boots on his feet. His entire body was covered in a strand of a Taoist glow that seethed like fire, and it flowed endlessly, causing his might to be unrestrained and ostentatious. But at this moment, this handsome man's expression was terrifyingly gloomy, and it caused all the people that followed by his side to go silent like cicadas in the winter. Shockingly, this person was Su Xingfeng. All those years ago, he, Xiao Ran, Gong Yangyu, Wen Xiang, and Yun She had descended to the lower dimensions under the lead of the numinous treasure Holy Land's outer court elder, Gao Yang. Senior brother Su, that demon god Lin, is extremely cunning. Even though his strength is formidable, it's absolutely insufficient to injure old ancestor Su Kong. According to my judgment, old ancestor Su Kong has surely been tricked by demon god Lin. A young man spoke in a low voice and seemed to be consoling Su Xingfeng. Of course. Do you really think I'm so stupid that I can't even discern this? Su Xingfeng frowned, and his voice carried a wisp of rage that couldn't be restrained. The young man's face stiffened, and he was embarrassed to say a word. Let's go quickly. I'd like to see how powerful Lin Sun has become after not seeing him for a few years. Su Xingfeng took a deep breath and flew straight forward. Su'er was his sixth granduncle. The reason why he attacked Lin Sun this time was also to avenge Su Xingfeng. But now, not only did Su'er fail to kill Lin Sun, but he was also tricked. This made Su Xingfeng shocked, and he couldn't help but feel great hatred. This time, he didn't set out to kill Lin Sun, but to see how much the young man who once made him lose face in the secret territory of the demon saint in the returning ruins had grown after a few years. However, not long after, Su Xingfeng was stunned. He opened his eyes wide and said, "Sixth granduncle, why are you back?" In the void in front of him, a mighty figure with gray hair and beard swept out, emitting a threatening aura. At the same time, all the people around Su Xingfeng saluted in unison. "Greetings, old ancestor Su." Su'er glanced at the crowd and finally fixed his eyes on Su Xingfeng. He said, "Xingfeng, what are you doing?" Su Xingfeng gnashed his teeth and said, "I want to see Lin Sun with my own eyes. How could a coarse boy from a mortal world become so powerful in just a few years?" His voice was full of hatred and unwillingness. Su'er responded with an "oh" and said, "You're not willing to lose to this kid? Or can't accept the fact that he has become more powerful than you?" Su Xingfeng's face was slightly stiff. After a while, he nodded and said, "Sixth granduncle is right. I do have such an idea. There was no need to hide it. To cultivate, you must first recognize the reality in your own ability. Xingfeng is so narrow-minded. I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to achieve anything in the future." Su'er sighed. Sixth granduncle, Su Xingfeng opened his mouth to explain, but he saw Su'er's face darkened. An invisible force spread out and suddenly shouted, "You still want to quibble? I think you're blinded by lard. Kneel down and admit your mistake." His voice was like a thunderclap, making Su Xingfeng's ears buzz and his mind shake. He subconsciously knelt down in the void. But immediately, he noticed that something was wrong. Sixth granduncle had always taken good care of him and had never spoken so harshly. What was wrong with him today? He couldn't help but raise his head to take a look. What he saw instantly made him realize that something was wrong. Although the appearance and demeanor of the sixth granduncle in front of him were exactly the same as he remembered, his breath was obviously much weaker and lacked the unique power that belonged to the longevity Tribulation King realm. Moreover, there was something wrong with the way he looked at her. It actually carried a trace of a faintly discernible sense of ridicule. "You are not the sixth granduncle," Su Xingfeng said angrily. The others were also stunned, and they were completely baffled. But Su'er laughed and said, "You want to recognize me as your grandfather, but I don't want to recognize you as my grandson." As soon as he finished speaking, Su'er revealed his true appearance and turned into a handsome young man. It was Lin's son. Seeing Lin's son and listening to the mocking laughter, Su Xingfeng's handsome face suddenly turned red, and his long hair flew backward. He was so angry that smoke came out of his 7 orifices. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Lin's son with a trembling finger. "Lin's son, you bastard! How dare you humiliate me like this?" He was so angry that he almost went crazy. Just now, he actually knelt in front of his enemy. Although he was deceived, it was still too shameful. If such a scandal were spread, he would not be able to raise his head for the rest of his life. "Demon God Lin, how dare you? Damn it!" The other descendants of the Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure also reacted, and their faces were extremely ugly. Chapter 1050. A few years ago, Su Xingfeng was still brooding over his defeat at the hands of Lin's son in the secret land of the Demon Saint in the Ultimate Ruins. A few years later, Su Xingfeng had successfully entered the ranks of the core disciples of the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, and he thought it was enough to wash away his previous shame. But what he couldn't accept was that Lin's son was now the famous demon god Lin. He was unwilling to admit that he had been overshadowed by Lin's son once again. Therefore, when he learned that Lin's son had appeared in the Mabai province, he intended to find out for himself how powerful the enemy he had hated for years was. At this time, Su Xingfeng finally realized how terrifying demon god Lin was. In just 3 strikes, he was directly suppressed without any suspense. He was completely crushed without any strength to struggle. Compared to a few years ago, Lin's son was like a different person now. His fighting skills were so powerful and his power was so domineering that Su Xingfeng felt a wave of despair. After all, he had also set foot on the extreme path of cultivation, but when he faced Lin's son, he was still suppressed. It was also at this time that Su Xingfeng finally realized that in these years, while he had been growing stronger, so had Lin's son, and he was ridiculously strong. He suspected that in the entire Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, only Yin Zhanxiu could have a chance to suppress Lin's son. However, before Su Xingfeng could think further, he was knocked out by Lin's son. After a while, the other 16 successors of the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure were all suppressed. None of them survived, and none of them could escape. Wuling City. The night was dark, but the city was brightly lit. A travel-worn cultivator had just arrived outside the city and was about to enter. But when he looked up, he was dumbfounded. On the tall and lofty city wall, there were many figures hanging in a row, all tied up and with disheveled hair. And on it, there was a line of wantonly and eye-catching bloody words. Some successors of the famous sect have no sense of shame and colluded with black dogs. Their despicable behavior is outrageous and intolerable. Seeing this scene, the cultivator gasped and was shocked. It wasn't long before more and more cultivators gathered outside the city, and their expressions changed and were extremely shocked when they saw this scene. Who is it that dares to hang a descendant of a spirit treasure holy land here to show off? Many people's hearts trembled. The Wuling County was the closest city to the Holy Land of Spirit Treasures. But now, the future leader of the Holy Land of Spirit Treasures was tied up and hung on the city wall. This was clearly a slap in the face for the holy land of spirit treasures. Colluding with the Black Sea Tengu race? If it's really like that, then these fellows are truly shameless. Who doesn't know that these black dogs are the race that all the cultivators in the world hate the most? There are also people who gasped in surprise. The information revealed by that line of bloody words was truly shocking. If it was proven to be true, the reputation of the spiritual treasure Holy Land would definitely be stained. It must be Demon God Lin's doing. Only this guy would have the guts to do such an outrageous thing. That's right. Hasn't the numinous treasure Holy Land been searching for this kid these past few days? Obviously, all of this is a form of revenge from that kid. Most cultivators simultaneously guessed the same name at the first possible moment, and their hearts surged without end, and they were unable to calm down. Earlier, when they heard the news that the spiritual treasure Holy Land was searching for Lin's son, there were still many cultivators intending to watch the show, and they thought that Demon God Lin would probably suffer a calamity this time. But who would have imagined that Demon God Lin would launch a counterattack tonight? Moreover, this counterattack was completely undisguised and overbearing to the extreme. Once this matter is exposed, the spiritual treasure Holy Land will absolutely not let it go. If nothing unexpected happens, the entire Mabai prefecture will start to suffer a great storm tonight. Someone sighed with emotion and had a premonition that the matter tonight was bound to cause an unpredictable storm. In the distance, Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe withdrew their gazes, looked at each other, and both of them laughed silently. The spiritual treasure Holy Land will definitely be infuriated by this great gift, and that old bastard Su'er, who colluded with the Black Sea Tengu race, will not only have to bear the infamy, but he also has to give the spiritual treasure Holy Land a satisfactory explanation. Otherwise, the influence will be too bad. Xiao Qinghe said with a smile. Coming from the Sun Moon Palace, he knew the style of these ancient orthodoxies best. For the sake of dignity and reputation, it was impossible to choose to cooperate with the Black Sea Tengu race openly. Otherwise, they would be despised by the world. It's a pity that I can't see Miss Zhao Jingxian this time. Xiao Qinghe glanced at Lin Sun. Isn't it said that she has already gone to the Immortal God Mountain? It happens that we are also going to participate in the Junior Giants list, so there's no harm in seeing her at that time. Lin Sun looked calm, but in fact, he felt a little regretful in his heart. His original purpose of coming to the Mabai prefecture this time was to see Zhao Jingxian, but he didn't expect that it would cause such a disturbance. However, Lin Sun didn't regret it. The hatred between him and the spiritual treasure Holy Land had been formed several years ago. Even if there was no conflict today, it was bound to break out in the future. But I have to remind you that Yin Zhanxiu also went to the Immortal God Mountain with Zhao Jingxian this time. Xiao Qinghe reminded. Moreover, everything you've done today will surely enter the ears of Yin Zhanxiu at the first possible moment. Even if it wasn't for the sake of Zhao Jingxian and merely for the sake of defending the reputation of the sect, Yin Zhanxiu would probably take you to be a thorn in his side. Lin Sun nodded. Of course, he knew what kind of consequences would be caused by what he did tonight. A few days later, the Dongxing boundary was shocked. Lin Sun, who had received a lot of attention because he ranked first on the Tianjiao list, once again aroused the amazement of countless cultivators. Someone calculated the time. It had only been less than 3 months since Demon Lin entered the Dongxing boundary, but he had already caused trouble in the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land in the ancient Song Prefecture, the heaven-reaching sword sect in the White Jade capital, and the spiritual treasure Holy Land in the Mabai Prefecture. Every single one of these 3 great powers were renowned ancient sects that possessed extremely deep resources and reserves. As for Fiend God Lin, he was a youth without a sect, yet he dared to challenge an ancient orthodoxy. Every time he did so, he would stir up a huge storm before swaggering off. This truly shocked countless cultivators. It was unbelievable. There were many ancient orthodoxies scattered throughout the Dongxing boundary. After all, this was the ancient desolation domain that was publicly acknowledged as the home of saints and the place where the divine path lasted forever. Originally, Some ancient orthodoxies didn't care about the sudden appearance of demon god Lin, and they thought it was only a small matter caused by a young junior. But now, these ancient orthodoxies were alarmed, and they started to pay attention to this young man who rose up powerfully like a shooting star. He came from a mortal world, had no sect, had no roots, and was all alone. Yet he was able to escape safely from the hands of three ancient orthodoxies time and time again. This undoubtedly seemed to be extraordinary. This kid is like a demon that runs amok and is lawless. Once he rises up, he's bound to bring calamity to the world. Many orthodoxies made such an evaluation. Lin Sun was a young man of humble birth, yet he dared to challenge ancient orthodoxies time and time again. This caused the other orthodoxies to feel vigilant, and they sensed a trace of a threat. A great era is about to arrive, and an unprecedented change is about to play out in the ancient desolation domain. It isn't surprising that a young genius like Demon God Lin was born at this time of replacement. Even more orthodoxies maintained an attitude of watching coldly from the sidelines. There would never be a lack of geniuses and outstanding geniuses in this recent period of time. Even though Lin Sun's display was extremely striking, he was still a young man in the end. There were many peers that were as outstanding and extraordinary as him, and it was even to the extent that there were some that were even more extraordinary than him. Perhaps only if he was able to step foot into the peak of the king realm in this great era would the true measure of his resources. While the outside world was discussing this matter, Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe had already appeared on a desolate and uninhabited snowfield. Everywhere that met the eye was covered in snow and ice, and the boundless heavens and the earth were covered in a silvery white expanse. The immortal mountain is located within a secret realm. If we want to enter it, we must first cross this black frost ice field. Xiao Qinghe let out a breath of air, and the hot air had just spread when it was frozen into ice shards that rustled and fell to the ground. This place is rumored to be the lair of the ancient torch dragon clan. It's cold to the bone, and there are numerous fierce beasts hibernating within it. It won't be easy to cross it safely. Xiao Qinghe introduced as he flew forward with Lin Sun. Even though the vast universe arc was extremely fast, it consumed a great amount of energy as well. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Sun didn't want to drive such a holy artifact to swagger about. At this moment, there were still around 7 days before the minor tycoon list. According to Xiao Qinghe's judgment, if nothing unexpected happened, they should be able to enter the immortal mountain in advance. In the boundless snow and wind, their figures were quickly drowned, and they vanished into the distance. After a moment, a wave of intense sounds of battle came from extremely far away. Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe suddenly stopped and spread out their divine senses. Extremely far away, an ice python that was 3 kilometers long and as thick as a house soared into the sky, and it was an intense battle with a man with a dignified figure. The ice python possessed peerless strength, and a pair of horns had already faintly appeared on its head, causing it to faintly seem like it had transformed into a dragon. It soared through the sky and controlled the energy of lightning and frost, causing the heavens and the earth to fall into a state of unrest while emanating monstrous, ferocious might. It could be said without exaggeration that even a half-step king realm expert was bound to perish in the mouth of this beast. However, contrary to the expectations of Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe, the ice python had completely fallen into a situation of being suppressed at this moment. The man with a dignified figure had fiery long hair, and he held a blood-red saber that was a meter long and completely suffused with the sheen of lightning, causing him to have an unrestrained bearing. His combat style was extremely unique. His saber was like a thunderclap, swift and overbearing, and the numerous dazzling saber chi seemed as if they were condensed from thunderclaps from the 9 heavens. They crisscrossed in the heavens and the earth, and they were filled with a terrifying aura of destruction that caused the sky to shatter into ripples that spread ceaselessly. Merely looking at him from afar gave others an oppressive, fierce, and overbearing aura. Bang! When Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe looked over, the battle was already nearing its end, and they saw the figure that was dignified like flames suddenly charge into the sky before slashing down with his saber, and it was like a blood-red bolt of lightning had descended from the sky. The enormous head of the ice python exploded into pieces with a bang. Chapter 1051. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little amazed. With a single glance, one could tell that some people were extraordinary. They were destined to shake the world and soar through the clouds. For example, the dignified figure who stood proudly with a saber after killing the python was undoubtedly such a person. Laughing in the heavens, Xiao Qinghe said in surprise, "He's here too." In an instant, Lin Sun also remembered who this person was. In the younger generation of the Northern Dipper world, there was Yi Chun, the sword devil who once fought in the Northern Dipper world alone and defeated 90 provinces with one sword. There was also Laughing in the Heavens who once said, "I dare to laugh at the heavens like a pond, but I hate the heavens for being too low." Both of them were regarded as the double master of sword and saber. Like the twin stars, they were famous in the Northern Dipper world and were as dazzling as the sun. Obviously, the dignified figure in the distance must be laughing in the heavens. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Laughing in the Heavens in the distance looked back. His facial features were as sharp as a knife, and his eyebrows were sparse, giving him a heroic spirit, especially his eyes, which were narrow and bright like a knife. When he looked back, there seemed to be a sharp bolt of lightning shooting across the air at his eyes. Xiao Qinghe's body tensed imperceptibly. Qi surged all over his body, and his clothes fluttered without wind. This was an invisible confrontation of momentum. Just for a moment, Laughing in the Heavens' eyes moved to Lin Sun. He deserves to be called Blade Maniac. Lin Sun looked indifferent as if he didn't feel it, but he couldn't help but be surprised. Due to their different personalities and different paths of the Great Tao, the temperament and aura displayed by every prodigy was different. Some people's breath was reserved, some were strong, and some were feminine. Laughing in the Heavens' breath was like the sun shining alone in the sky, shining brightly and dazzlingly. In the face of such an existence, some of his peers who were not strong enough would be shocked instantly and couldn't resist at all. Of course, Lin Sun was only a little surprised. He was surprised that Laughing in the Heavens' momentum was one of the top powerhouses of the younger generation he had ever seen. As for shock and fear, it was far from it. At the same time, Laughing in the Heavens in the distance was also a little surprised. His instinct told him that Lin Sun was an extremely unusual character. If his momentum was like a scorching sun that could illuminate the sky, Lin Sun gave him the impression of a great abyss. Vast, boundless, and unfathomable. Interesting. The fight for the minor giants this time around will not disappoint me. Laughing at the Heavens withdrew his gaze and laughed soundlessly, revealing 2 rows of neat, snow-white teeth. Then, he turned around and left. Although Lin Sun was extraordinary and surprised him a little, momentum was only a part of strength. There were too many factors that could determine whether an expert was powerful or not. A stronger aura did not necessarily equate to a stronger combat power. Laughing at the Heavens stood tall and proud. His hair was crimson like fire, and he was dressed in a white robe. He strolled through the wind and snow, and even his back was dazzling. Shouting aside, "I'm not as good as him." To make a prideful figure who had reached the pinnacle admit that he was inferior to others undoubtedly required a great deal of courage. Lin Sun patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's just a small gap. This is just a temporary struggle. The road to the Great Way is a struggle for a lifetime." Xiao Qinghe shrugged and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I've already been defeated by you once in White Jade Capital. My skin has already become thick and tough. How can I be defeated again?" The two continued to walk along the path taken by Laughing at the Heavens. It was calm and peaceful, and they even gained a lot of advantages, because all the fierce beasts along the way had been killed by Laughing at the Heavens with one saber strike. When Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe arrived, there was only a pile of broken corpses on the ground. The mysterious frost ice field was far more vast than Lin Sun had imagined. Along the way, the wind and snow were everywhere, and the environment was extremely harsh. Ordinary practitioners couldn't bear the invasion of such biting cold air at all. Even Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe had to run their cultivation to resist the whistling cold air in the air as they went deeper into the ice field. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind swept from the far distance behind them, setting off a storm, frost, and snow all over the sky. It was a phoenix with golden wings. Its wings were 300 meters long when stretched out, and it flew in the void with amazing power. On the back of the golden phoenix sat a group of young men and women. The men were handsome and the women were beautiful. Each of them had an extraordinary bearing, and one could tell at a glance that they came from an extraordinary background. They obviously noticed Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe, but they didn't pay attention to them. Soon, they left on the golden phoenix. The successor of the first returning Taoist sect has also come. Xiao Qinghe narrowed his eyes slightly. I wonder if Lu Songfeng has come. That guy is abnormal. 5 years ago, he was only one step away from entering the ranks of the junior giants. After Xiao Qinghe's explanation, Lin Sun knew that Lu Songfeng was the leader of the younger generation of the first returning Taoist sect, and his combat strength was extremely tyrannical. As the people of the first returning Taoist sect left, cultivators appeared one after another along the way. All of them were the successors of ancient orthodoxies. They traveled in groups. Not only did they come from Dongxing boundary, but there were also successors of ancient orthodoxies from Shihing boundary, Beta boundary, and Nanshan boundary. Even Xiao Qinghe couldn't recognize the successors of some sects, but didn't mean that they weren't strong enough. After all, the 4 boundaries of the ancient desolation were separated by the boundary river. It was normal that they didn't know each other's situation, but this still made Xiao Qinghe feel dignified, and he said, in the past, the participants of the Junior Giants list were mostly the top figures of the younger generation of Dongxing boundary. But this time, it's obviously different. There is no need to explain the reason. Lin Sun was well aware of it. There was no other reason. The Great World was coming. Whether it was for the sake of entering the Tianjiao Golden List or to seize the great fortune in the Great World, the young talents of Shihing boundary, Beta boundary, and Nanshan boundary were bound to be unwilling to be left out and would participate in the competition for hegemony. Just like the Junior Giants list this time, it was bound to be completely different from the past. This time, the competition is bound to be more intense and cruel than before. Originally, I had the confidence to attack the top 36, but now, shouting aside lightly, I suddenly feel a little unreliable. The result of this kind of competition can only be known after fighting. Lin Sun said casually, people can't be without pride, nor can they belittle themselves. Xiao Qinghe shook his head. He was a member of his own family, and he knew his own business. Indeed, he was a core descendant of Sun Moon Palace, ranked among the 16 blazing suns, and was also a very famous figure among his peers. But he also knew that there were definitely many figures like him among the many ancient orthodoxies of Dongxing boundary. Moreover, in addition to the cultivators of Dongxing boundary, there were also experts from other 3 realms participating in the Junior Giants list this time. However, Xiao Qinghe wasn't without confidence, because this time, it was a fight for the minor tycoon ranking and not the tycoon ranking of the 4 realms. According to the rules and restrictions of the Immortal Mountain, any expert over the age of 30, no matter how extraordinary his talent was, couldn't participate in the competition. This restriction alone was enough to stop the pace of many powerful figures. At the same time, the experts who had been ranked in the Junior Giants list couldn't participate in the competition for a second time. Figures like Yin Qingbai, Yin Zhanxiu, Mi Hengzhen, Wang Xuanyu, and Yi Mo naturally couldn't participate. In this way, the pressure of the competition would be relatively less. Otherwise, if the senior geniuses like Yin Qingbai and Yin Zhanxiu were allowed to participate, there would be nothing left for others. I hope there won't be too many freaks like this guy in this competition. Otherwise, there won't be any hope. Xiao Qinghe cast a sidelong glance at Lin Sun. He was very sure that with Lin Sun's current combat strength, he should be able to enter the Junior Giants list. As for where he could be ranked, it was hard to say. After all, under the background of the coming Great Era, there would definitely be many monstrous figures participating in the Junior Giants list. It was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be more freaks than Lin Sun. 6 hours later, Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe finally passed through the mysterious frost tundra and arrived in front of a vast ocean. Far away, they could see numerous islands standing on the surface of the sea. They were densely packed and scattered like stars in the sky. In the distance, they couldn't see anything because it was shrouded in thick mist. This is the Star Chest Sea, and the undying forbidden area is located on the other side of this sea. Xiao Qinghe pointed at the distant ocean and said, "This sea isn't simple. It's like a chessboard, and the islands densely packed on it are like chess pieces that are intertwined and complicated. If you want to cross this sea, then you must possess the Pathfinder diagram. Otherwise, no matter how extraordinary your ability is, you're bound to be lost within it and have practically no hope of escaping." A very long time ago, there was once a saint that intended to head to the undying forbidden area to search for fortuitous encounters. But because he didn't possess the Pathfinder diagram, he was trapped within it and hasn't returned until now. Thus, under normal circumstances, no one dares to take a step into this sea. Lin Sun nodded. He'd already noticed that as soon as his divine sense spread out to the distant sea, it was like a clay ox entering the sea and vanished without a trace, and it was utterly unable to play the slightest role. Obviously, some sort of forbidden energy that was related to the operation of the laws of the heavens and the earth existed on this vast star chest sea, causing the divine sense to lose its miraculous effect. When Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe arrived before the coast, they just happened to see some cultivators flashing towards the star chest sea. As soon as their figures appeared on the surface of the sea, they actually vanished into thin air as if they'd completely evaporated from the world. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. This star chest sea really is extraordinary, and it's enveloped in an unimaginable and miraculous energy. Let's go as well. Once we arrive at the undying forbidden area, we'll be able to find out exactly which formidable figures are participating in the competition for the Minor Colossus rankings this time. Xiao Qinghe took a deep breath and intended to set out. But right at this moment, the figure of a mighty old man suddenly flashed out explosively from behind an enormous rock in the extreme distance. "Little bastard, you've finally come. I've been waiting here for you for a long time." As his voice resounded out, the old man's figure had already flashed and charged over, and an extremely terrifying aura of a king covered the heavens and the earth like tide water as it enveloped over. Chapter 1052. Su'er's heart was filled with the pleasure of revenge. A few days ago in Mabai province, he was ambushed by Lin Sun. Not only did he suffer heavy injuries, but he also bore the infamy of colluding with the Black Sea Tengu clan. This was a great humiliation to him, and he couldn't control himself at all. He immediately started searching for Lin Sun's traces. After analysis, in his opinion, if Lin Sun wanted to rise in Dongsheng domain, it was very likely that he would participate in the competition for the minor giants. As such, Su'er had arrived here a long time ago and had waited patiently. A sovereign who had stepped into the second tribulation of immortality did not hesitate to do this to deal with a junior. It could be seen how angry he was. Hard work paid off. Now that Lin Sun had appeared, Su'er, who had been preparing for revenge for a long time, would not hesitate any longer. Moreover, after learning a painful lesson last time, he used his full strength as soon as he attacked. The terrifying pressure of the sovereign realm pressed over like a landslide and a tsunami, enveloping the universe and making it difficult for Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe to even move. The two were shocked. They did not expect Su'er, the old bastard, to rush out at the moment they were about to enter the Star Chest Sea. Moreover, he used his full strength as soon as he attacked. The power of a life and death sovereign was enough to kill any cultivator of the 5 major realms. Moreover, Su'er was a sovereign who had passed 2 tribulations of immortality. The power of this attack was something that even a true sovereign realm cultivator would not dare to take. However, at this critical moment, an unexpected scene happened. A pitch-black iron rod suddenly shot through the sky, like a pillar that supported the heavens. It pierced through the sky and squeezed through the void, emitting a divine power that could destroy heaven and earth. Rumble. The iron rod swept through the air and smashed down violently. The divine might of the sovereign realm that covered the heavens and the earth suddenly exploded like chaotic clouds, emitting a deafening hiss. At the same time, Su'er, who was sneering ferociously, suddenly froze. His eyeballs protruded, and he was almost scared out of his wits. Before he could react, the iron rod had already swept across his body. Bang! Under the astonished gazes of Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe, Su'er was smashed away like a sandbag. The sound of bones breaking could be heard, and Su'er's powerful body had been smashed into a crooked shape. Even his spine had been broken. Amidst his shrill and terrified screams, his entire body flew towards the horizon, falling into the depths of the boundless snowstorm. F***CK. Xiao Qinghe was flabbergasted. Lin Sun also felt a little dizzy. This scene was undoubtedly too shocking. A king who had stepped into the 2nd tribulation of immortality was actually sent flying like a meteorite by a rod and disappeared without a trace. At the shores of the Star-Chest Sea, some of the cultivators who had yet to take action gasped as well, looking as if they had seen a ghost. Boom! The pitch-black iron rod that had pierced through the sky was put away and landed in the hands of a tall figure that was as tall as a mountain. Then it disappeared. In an instant, the oppressive holy aura that permeated the air also disappeared. This tall figure was a young man with bronze skin. His face was rugged, his eyebrows were as thick as ink, and his eyes were large and bright. The strange thing was that he wore animal skins. His thick, long hair was disheveled, and the skin on his exposed arms were like rocks. He stood there like a barbarian from the primitive wilderness, and he emitted a violent and domineering aura that caused one's heart to tremble. At this moment, everyone's gazes fell on this young man in animal skins. Their expressions were filled with surprise, curiosity, and seriousness. Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe were naturally no exception. It was all thanks to the help of this young man in animal skins that they were able to avert disaster this time. However, before they could express their gratitude, the tall young man in animal skins who emitted a violent aura said in a low, muffled voice, "I'm Alu. I want to participate in the minor giant rankings. If you have the guiding Way Mystic map, then bring me along. If you don't, then forget it." His voice rumbled like thunder, and his words were straightforward and straightforward. "You also want to participate in the minor giant rankings?" Xiao Qinghe's eyes widened in disbelief. This fellow can send a 2nd tribulation longevity monarch flying with a single strike of his rod. Why would he come here to join in the fun? Alu scratched his head and asked in puzzlement, "I'm only 19 this year. Why can't I participate? 19 years old?" Another wave of gasps sounded out nearby. Truthfully speaking, they had all thought that this boorish-looking fellow was an old senior. Who would have thought that he would actually be so young? At this moment, Lin Sun calmed down and found that although Alu's aura was extremely powerful, it had not exceeded the scope of the reincarnation developing realm. He also did not have the unique aura of a monarch realm. But why did you send him flying with a single strike of your rod just now? Xiao Qinghe was stunned and felt that his brain was not enough to process it. Before he finished speaking, Alu rolled his eyes and grinned. "You're really an idiot. That was the power of my dragon bone rod, not my personal combat strength." Black lines appeared on Xiao Qinghe's forehead, and he was depressed in his heart. Being called an idiot by a 19-year-old blockhead caused him to feel extremely displeased. However, seeing that the other party had saved his life once, he endured it. Dragon bone rod. It seems that it should be a powerful, holy treasure. Lin Sun finally made a judgment when he thought of the scene where Su'er was sent flying just now. "Alu, you saved us just now because you want us to take you into the immortal forbidden area?" Xiao Qinghe couldn't help asking again. Alu rolled his eyes again and said, I'm not that bored. I attacked just now because I don't like that old guy. He has already stepped into the king realm, but he still wants to go against us young people. He's too shameless. He deserves to be beaten. Xiao Qinghe really couldn't stand this guy's supercilious eyes. It seemed that he was looking at a mentally retarded person, which made him uncontrollably angry. He gritted his teeth and said, just because I don't like him? Alu nodded naturally and then said unhappily, I just asked you if you could take me with you. Why do you talk so much nonsense? You're just like a noisy and smelly crow. Annoying. If I was in a bad mood, I would have slapped you to death. Xiao Qinghe's lips twitched fiercely, and he gritted his teeth secretly. Alu was too arrogant. Every single word of this barbarian was simply capable of infuriating someone to death. All right, let's go together. Lin Sun spoke and directly decided. Instead, he felt that Alu was very interesting. You agree just like that? Xiao Qinghe transmitted his voice angrily and muttered, Aren't you worried about being angered to death by this barbarian who's simple-minded, well-developed, and likes to roll his eyes when he speaks? Lin Sun smiled, patted Xiao Qinghe on the shoulder, and didn't say anything further. In the end, Xiao Qinghe was unable to dissuade Lin Sun, and he flashed towards the star chest sea with Alu. Swish, as soon as they arrived on the surface of the sea, a miraculous scene appeared. It was as if the heavens and the earth had turned upside down and the stars had moved. The scene before their eyes suddenly changed as numerous bright silver starlight descended from the sky and descended onto the islands that stood towering on the surface of the sea. At this moment, the densely packed islands seemed to have awakened from silence, and they flowed with dazzling and illusory starlight. As far as the eye could see, the starry sky was vast, the ocean was boundless, and the silver starlight flowed through the heavens and the earth, giving others an unreal, magnificent, and illusory feeling. Xiao Qinghe's expression became extremely solemn and serious, and he withdrew a secret map that was polished from jade and branded with dense and obscure markings before carefully comparing the directions. After a short while, he suddenly raised his head and flashed towards an island in the distance. Lin Sun and Alu hurriedly followed closely behind him. This star chess, it was like a chess game of the heavens and the earth, and it was boundlessly mysterious. Once one wandered about within it, even a saint would very likely get lost within it. However, with Xiao Qinghe leading the way, no accidents occurred on the way forward. Lin Sun noticed that as they went deeper, the number of islands in the sea that they saw along the way increased, and they were densely packed like the stars in the sky. They were like numerous chess pieces that had been sprinkled on the surface of the sea, and they overflowed with dreamlike starlight. When he looked around, it was as if he'd entered the depths of a vast starry sky, and he was unable to distinguish north from south, and couldn't even find the way he'd come from. Lin Sun was in a trance, and he seemed to see the figure of an old man sitting above the vast ocean. A sky full of stars converged and circulated above him, and a myriad of silvery starlight poured down. On the other hand, his body was like a black hole abyss that swallowed and annihilated the starlight that poured down in torrents. It came endlessly and cycled in an endless cycle. At this instant, the heavens and the earth were silent, and it seemed as if only the figure of the old man remained. He was so solemn, dignified, and supreme. He was like a ruler from ancient times until now that had forgotten about the heavens and the earth and swallowed the stars in the sky. Inexplicably, Lin Sun's chest felt hot, and his spiritual veins silently released an obscure energy of the great way that surged into his sea of consciousness. In just an instant, an obscure and profound formation appeared in Lin Sun's mind. This formation used the heavenly cycle stars as its foundation and was formed by 365 major heavenly cycle star formation diagrams and 14,800 minor heavenly cycle star formations. After carefully comprehending it, the entire formation was like a starry universe, and there were countless dazzling stars within it. They circulated along different trajectories, and it was dense and complicated to the extreme. Holy formation of all stars. Impressively, This was a mysterious and shocking holy formation inheritance. Its mysteries converged in his sea of consciousness and transformed into a diagram of stars in the sky. This bizarre scene made Lin Sun feel like he was in a trance, as if he was in a dream. Could this star chest sea be transformed by a great formation of all stars? And the figure of the old man that had sat here and swallowed the stars in the sky seemed to be the figure of the saint that had once dashed wildly in the depths of the sky. Devouring star path, spiritual vein, abyss devouring star, star chest sea, and great formation of all stars. There seems to be a subtle connection and echo among them. It's because of the spiritual vein that I was able to comprehend the devouring star path at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival and peep into the experience of the saint running wildly in the depths of the sky. And it's also because of the spiritual vein that I inadvertently obtained the inheritance and mysteries of the great formation of all stars in this star chest sea. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a deep doubt in his heart. How many secrets were hidden in his talent of devouring star spiritual vein that he didn't know? Lin Sun. Suddenly, Xiaoqing's call rang in his ears, which made Lin Sun suddenly awaken from that kind of trance and misty thoughts. Looking up, he saw Xiao Qinghe and Alu staring at him as if they were looking at a monster. Chapter 1053. At first, Xiao Qinghe and Alu didn't notice anything wrong. But later, as they went deeper into the star chest sea, they both found that the bright starlight falling from the sky actually surged towards Lin Sun, making his figure silvery and dreamlike. Only then did they realize that something was wrong. The starlight was illusory and overflowing with clear brilliance, adding an ethereal aura to Lin Sun. His body was like a bottomless black hole. No matter how much starlight came, it would be swallowed up completely. Later, as Lin Sun inhaled and exhaled, the stars in the sky seemed to tremble with him, and the falling starlight came from all directions like a surging river, causing the void to be in disorder. It was silver and dazzling. Such a scene could be described as earth-shattering. But what was worse was that in this way, their path forward was covered by the starlight. Even if they had the guide map, they couldn't identify the path at all. In desperation, Xiao Qinghe had to say something to interrupt Lin Sun's wonderful encounter. Lin Sun came to his senses and glanced around. When he saw the surrounding starlight surging and dense like mist, he immediately understood what was going on. His heart stirred as he recalled the heavenly cycle star diagram in his sea of consciousness. He subconsciously waved his sleeve. Whoosh, the bright starlight all over the sky returned in all directions along the original direction, and soon disappeared without a trace. From a distance, it was like an immortal shaking his sleeve, and the starlight rushed into the sky. The magnificent scene made Xiao Qinghe's eyes pop out. How could this happen? Alu's reaction was very simple. He clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "It's so fucking beautiful. One day I must ascend to the ninth heaven and grab a handful of stars to play with." Grab a handful of stars to play with? Brag hard, Xiao Qinghe sneered. A frog in a well, how pitiful. Alu rolled his eyes and didn't bother to pay attention to Xiao Qinghe. Xiao Qinghe was instantly flustered and exasperated. What he couldn't stand the most was Alu's supercilious look. It was simply intolerable for a rough and overbearing guy like the barbarian god to like supercilious look. I'm warning you. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you saved us once. Xiao Qinghe said furiously. Only the weak will threaten. The strong will directly attack. Alu crossed his arms that were as thick as rocks in front of his chest. His figure was extremely tall and was a full head taller than Xiao Qinghe. Naturally, he gave off a feeling of looking down on Xiao Qinghe. Xiao Qinghe really had the urge to make a move. This Alu's mouth was definitely a great killing weapon that attracted hatred, and it would infuriate people to death. All right, let's hurry up and leave. Lin Sun quickly persuaded. If it wasn't for Lin Sun's persuasion, I would have disregarded everything and fought you. Xiao Qinghe grunted coldly. Words and no action won't do. A real man only has one word. Do it. Alu's eyes were bright as he stared at Xiao Qinghe provocatively. Lin Sun felt a headache. Only now did he realize that Xiao Qinghe and Alu were like enemies who were destined to restrain each other. They never stopped fighting. Helpless, he could only take the lead and move forward. This instantly shocked Xiao Qinghe, and he hurriedly rushed forward and shouted, "This is the Star Chess Sea. You can't run around." This small dispute was finally over, and the three of them continued forward. However, Lin Sun's expression was slightly strange. As he moved forward, all the secrets of a nearby area appeared in his sea of consciousness in detail, allowing him to instantly judge the direction of every path. Where there was danger, where there was a maze, everything was clearly seen through by him. As expected, this star chassis is formed from a heavenly cycle star formation. Lin Sun's heart shook, and he felt as if he had been enlightened. He could even determine that the area they were currently moving forward was in the direction of the heavenly gate of the Horn Palace in the east of the formation. This place belonged to the scope of one of the 360 major heavenly cycle star formation diagrams, and there were 360 small formations hidden within it. The core of every formation corresponded to an island on the surface of the sea. Under the operation of the formation's energy, every island was covered in different powers. There were maze restriction, illusion restriction, slaughter restriction, and so on and so forth. Once he trespassed without permission, he would definitely trigger the restriction. After all, this was a holy formation that covered the heavens and the earth. Pulling one part would affect the whole thing. At that time, no matter how extraordinary one's means were, he was bound to encounter unpredictable dangers. Lin Sun made a careful comparison and found that the path Xiao Qinghe led was indeed one of the few paths of life in this area. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. The star chess sea might be an insurmountable impasse for the cultivators in the world. But for him who possessed the inheritance of the major heavenly cycle star formation, entering this sea was like walking on flat ground. Moreover, as long as he was willing, he could completely use the formation's power for his own use. In his sea of consciousness, the major heavenly cycle star diagram floated quietly. Lin Sun knew that he had inadvertently encountered a great fortune this time. Just the inheritance of this formation was enough for him to benefit endlessly. Along the way, Lin Sun compared and referred to it to figure out the mystery of the inheritance in a major heavenly cycle star diagram. The more he understood, the more amazed he was. The power of this formation was completely beyond his imagination. If it was operated at full strength, it could draw the power of 14,800 stars in the sky, which was enough to destroy a part of the world and destroy all living things. Regrettably, this was a holy formation, and it needed to be set up with the law of divine way. Even if he could see through its mystery, it wasn't something that Lin Sun could control right now. Back then, could it be that the saint who was running above the Zhou Su had set up the great heavenly cycle star formation here, with supreme means, and transformed it into this star chess ocean? Lin Sun sighed with emotion. If I encounter a fatal crisis that I can't resolve in the future, I can sneak into this place. In this way, even if the saint comes, he probably can't do anything to me. Of course, passively taking a beating wasn't Lin Sun's style. The star chess sea was an unimaginably large holy formation. If he could use 1/10,000th of its power, it would be more than enough to deal with the old monsters in the King realm. Along the way, Lin Sun occasionally talked with Alu. Soon, he learned that Alu's origin was extremely complicated. Alu came out of a secret realm left by the ancient times and finally came to the Dongxing boundary after many twists and turns. Before coming to the Dongxing boundary, Alu lived in a village deep in the mountains of that secret realm. He had been cultivating with an old man he called Old Bastard since he was a child. Speaking of the Old Bastard, Alu was full of resentment and complained to Lin Sun. He said that from the age of 3, he was forced to compete with the cub of the 6-armed demon ape tribe in strength, the descendant of the starbird in flying speed, the descendant of the true roar tribe in terms of whose voice was louder, and the descendant of the dragon elephant tribe in terms of whose body was stronger. Until the age of 13, where he finally defeated the descendants of other creatures in all kinds of competitions. Alu thought that he was finally free. Who would have thought that the old bastard made an even more abnormal request? Moving mountains. Every day, he had to move a mountain thousands of meters high and run from dawn to dusk and from dusk to dawn. When Alu could carry a mountain thousands of meters high like playing with stones, the old bastard made an even more outrageous request. Overturning the sea. When Alu could turn the clouds and rain like a flood dragon and set off a storm thousands of meters high in the sea. Without exception, he made a higher request. Until he came to the Dongxing boundary, he was still fighting with a group of descendants of horrible creatures. Every time, he didn't stop until he was exhausted. The old bastard has promised that when I step into the Supreme King realm in the Dongxing boundary, he won't make any more requests. At that time, I will be truly free. When Alu said this, his rough and wild face was full of longing and longing. It could be seen what a dark life he had lived before. After hearing this, Lin Sun also sighed and couldn't calm down. He could be sure that Alu in front of him was walking on the most difficult and arduous path since ancient times, becoming a sage by body refining. And the old bastard, in Alu's words, must be a great master. Moreover, through Alu's words, Lin Sun also realized that Alu seemed to live in a small village deep in the mountains. But in fact, the village was absolutely not simple. There were descendants of six-armed ape, starbird, true roar, dragon elephant. It was not a village at all. It was obviously an unworldly place occupied by ancient alien creatures. Thinking about it, the dragon bone cudgel in Alu's hand was a holy treasure that could easily knock away an old monster like Su'er. It could be inferred how extraordinary this secret realm he grew up in was. After hearing all this, Xiao Qinghe was speechless and scolded Alu in his heart. He had thought that demon god Lin was abnormal enough, but he never thought that Alu was not inferior to him at all. Here we are. After walking through the Star-Chest Sea for half a day, they arrived at an island. With a strange wave, Lin Sun and the other two were instantly moved to an empty world. The sky was blue, the earth was fragrant, and the air was filled with peaceful and pure spiritual energy. This place was very magical. Whether it was the verdant plants, vines, or the beautiful flowers, all of them were clean and flawless with spirituality. As soon as they arrived, Lin Sun and the others felt as if they had entered the legendary pure land of divine soil. Their mouths and noses were filled with pure and peaceful spiritual energy, and their spirits were refreshed and refreshed. Undoubtedly, this was the undying forbidden land regarded as one of the 5 forbidden lands in Dongxing world. At a glance, they could see a divine mountain standing in the distance. It was as black as ink, and there were 36 peaks on it. They were like blooming lotus petals that held up the sky. That's the undying mountain. It was born with the fortune of heaven and earth and possesses immortal characteristics. It has existed since ancient times and seems to be eternal. It's said that it's also one of the most primitive places of the Great Way in the ancient Desolation territory. The innate gods that were born in the chaos once lived on it. Xiao Qinghe's face revealed a trace of fanaticism. There are too many magical legends about it. Since ancient times, no one has been able to see through all its mysteries. Chapter 1054. Although there was the word death in the name of the immortal mountain, its charm and mountain style were opposite to it. This mountain was lofty, tall, and graceful like a winding dragon. It was completely jet black like black jade, and it had the momentum of uprooting the earth to connect to the sky. Its entire body flowed with an immortal and holy aura. At the center of it, the 36 peaks were like blooming lotus petals, towering into the sky, magnificent and majestic. No matter who came here, so long as they saw this mountain, they would feel a grand aura of eternity. It was too sacred and extraordinary, and it imperceptibly affected the power of the laws of heaven and earth in the immortal forbidden area, causing this place to be full of vitality and enshrouded in auspicious signs. It was like a pure land of divinity. Is this the immortal mountain? Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. The strength of his soul was extremely strong, and he could instantly capture the mountain's momentum. It was eternal and filled with incomprehensible fluctuations of supreme energy. According to rumor, in every minor tycoon ranking, the top 36 experts will be able to obtain a strand of the Great Way karmic luck contained in the immortal mountain. The higher one's ranking was, the more the Great Way karmic luck would be obtained. Without karmic luck, one couldn't become a king. The Great Way karmic luck was the most illusory and precious thing in the world. Ordinary fortuitous encounters might allow a cultivator's strength to advance by leaps and bounds. But the Great Way karmic luck could affect a cultivator's path, and it was even sufficient to affect the direction of a cultivator's destiny. Just like breaking through to the king realm, if one didn't have karmic luck, then no matter how strong one's foundation and talent were, one was bound to be unable to reach this realm. To put it simply, the stronger one's karmic luck was, the more fortuitous encounters one might obtain on the path to the Tao. Even if one encountered calamities, one would be able to avert danger. On the other hand, if one's karmic luck was bad, then no matter how fast one's cultivation was, if one died prematurely, then all one's efforts were bound to be in vain. One's life, 2's karmic luck, and 3's feng shui. Everyone in the world knew this universal principle. Xiao Qinghe cleared his throat and introduced. Although the minor tycoon ranking this time is different from the past, the rules are still the same as before. It's roughly divided into 3 stages. The first stage is climbing the mountain, the second stage is guarding the mountain, and the third stage is fighting for karmic luck, which is also regarded as the ranking competition. Climbing the mountain is the first hurdle. When a minor giant's ranking competition begins, all the experts will rush to the top of the immortal sacred mountain at the first possible moment. What matters is speed. Whoever can take the lead will have the advantage in guarding the mountain. Alu said indifferently, "What's so difficult about that? When I was 14, I could already play around with a mountain peak in my hand. It's karma luck." Xiao Qinghe was very blunt. He felt that he had finally found a chance to attack Alu. Karmic god. Karma, Kan Xiao. He was KIC Dragon. You saw that on? They're in Mountain of King Mountain. King of. Mountain, Mountain of the Mountain. Karmic. Lin E Mountain, Cable Mountain, King, and. As you can see, there are 36 peaks on Karmic Mountain, which means that only 36 people can win the competition. In the past battles for the minor tycoon rankings, most of the most powerful individuals would not choose the same route when ascending the mountain. This was because it was very easy for both sides to be injured, and the losses would outweigh the gains. Lin Sun nodded. If a peerless figure like Laughing at the Heavens really chose to climb the same mountain, there was no doubt that many people would be eliminated in the first round. At that time, it would be useless even if they had the strength to be ranked on the minor tycoon ranking. Therefore, before ascending the mountain, one had to carefully consider the route of ascending the mountain. If the king could not see the king, then that would undoubtedly be the best result. Li Qinghuan was obviously worried about this. The reason was simple. This minor tycoon ranking was completely different from the past. There were too many peerless people, and the 36 peaks were not enough for everyone. This also meant that the competition on the way to the mountain would be crueler and more difficult than before. Are there any dangers or restrictions on Undying God Mountain? Lin Sun asked. Xiao Qinghe shook his head. There isn't any danger. There's only a layer of Grand Tao restrictions that prevents flying when ascending the mountain. Moreover, one has to resist a certain amount of pressure, so one can only rely on one's own strength to ascend the mountain. Apart from that, those who are over 30 years old and whose cultivation exceeds the reincarnation developing state will be excluded and will not be able to participate. Most importantly, when ascending the immortal God Mountain, Saint Artifact level weapons, some terrifying forbidden techniques, or extremely vicious secret treasures will be completely suppressed and unable to be used. At this point, Lin finally understood the rules of mountaineering. Of course, this is only the first stage. unless one's luck is too bad or if one has an unresolvable grudge against an opponent. One will usually be able to ascend the mountain peak. The real test is the second stage, guarding the mountain. When he spoke up to hear, Xiaoqing's expression became much more serious. The 36 mountains will only be occupied by 36 supreme figures in the end. Even if you occupy a single mountain, it will still suffer the seizing from other experts. In the end, it all depends on whether you're able to defend it. At that time, it's also the real time to compete for combat strength. Remember, when competing for the mountain peak, there's only one chance to fail. Once you fail, you'll be eliminated. Moreover, from the beginning of ascending the mountain to the time of guarding the mountain, there's only 30 minutes. After the 30 minutes, as long as one remains on the mountain peak, he or she will be ranked on the list of junior giants. Then, it's the competition for the ranking. Speaking of this, Xiaoqing suddenly found that his reminder was a little redundant. Whether it was Lin Sun or Lu, they were both abnormal guys like monsters. With their strength, they were at least more than 50% sure that they could successfully guard the mountain. What's the meaning of the third stage? Strive for luck? Lin Sun asked. Xiaoqing smiled and said, "You'll understand it yourself at that time." Without further delay, the three of them headed towards the distant Immortal God Mountain. At the foot of the Immortal God Mountain, many figures of practitioners had already gathered. There were men and women, and they were all very young. Each of them was extraordinary, faintly exuding an aura that far surpassed their peers. They were all outstanding and had different styles. They were all the top figures of the younger generation from various orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain, and the weakest one was at the level of inherited disciple. As for the core disciples of ancient orthodoxies like Xiaoqing, there were also many of them. All of them were like the blazing sun, surrounded by many figures like stars surrounding the moon. In addition, there were also some retainers, maids, and the like gathered there to serve their respective masters, which made the inheritors of the ancient orthodoxies even more noble and extraordinary. A group of experts of the Wind Whisperer clan were running around in the field with excited expressions, constantly recording the scenes in the field with message leaves. These experts of the Wind Whisperer clan didn't come to participate in the competition for the list of junior giants, but purely came to join in the fun and collect information. The dazzling figures of the younger generation of the Four Worlds were gathered in this competition for the list of junior giants. Any one of them might be a genius that was rarely seen in 10,000 years, and there was no lack of top figures whose names had already shaken the world. It could be said that geniuses that were rare to see in the outside world were numerous in the Immortal God Mountain. It could be said to be a gathering of geniuses and stars. Similarly, because a great era was coming, the competition for the list of junior giants had become completely different from the past, and it caused countless people in the outside world to pay attention to it. Nowadays, geniuses from the Four Worlds had gathered. How many lucky people could be ranked in the list of junior giants? Many ancient orthodoxies were also paying close attention to it. How could the experts of the Wind Whisperer clan, who liked to join in the fun, miss such an unprecedented event? When Lin Sun and the others arrived, they saw such a lively scene. Mother Kerr. The number of people participating in the competition this time is at least double that of the previous years. Xiaoqing gasped. With just a glance, he recognized many familiar figures, and all of them were top figures on par with him. There are indeed a lot. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. From his gaze, there was no lack of top figures amongst the young men and women in the field. Their auras were unusual, and they faintly had an all-powerful temperament that stood out from the crowd. Besides them, the other young men and women were similarly dazzling. They belonged to the top figures of the same generation, and each had their own edge and aura. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion because at least half of the most dazzling geniuses of the younger generation had appeared here. Actually, it was normal when he thought about it carefully. Each of the Four Worlds in the region of ancient desolation could be said to be boundlessly vast, and it possessed countless cities, hundreds of millions of cultivators, and all sorts of cultivation forces. Even if only one top figure could be selected from 100,000 young experts, it was sufficient to select a large group of similar stunning figures in the four worlds. Not to mention that ancient orthodoxies like the profound Inquisition sword school, the Pure Land of Longevity, the Heavenly Sword sect, and the Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure had never lacked true peerless figures. These are the so-called geniuses of this world. In my opinion, they aren't as strong as the descendants of the starnet bird near our village. They're only impressive to look at, but they're useless. Alu's eyes opened wide as he glanced at everyone present. In the end, he seemed to be slightly disappointed, and he couldn't help but mutter. Xiao Qinghe stood up abruptly, covered Alu's mouth, and gnashed his teeth as he said, "What's this place? How can you ridicule everyone? Aren't you afraid of arousing public wrath and becoming the target of public criticism? You're useless." Alu pushed Xiao Qinghe's hand away, rolled his eyes, and said, "So long as my fist is big enough, then what's there to be afraid of?" Xiao Qinghe's expression changed indeterminately, and he felt a headache coming on. This fellow is simply a blabbermouth, and a few words are sufficient to offend a large group of people. Even though Alu's voice wasn't loud, everyone present was a cultivator with sharp ears and eyes. In just an instant, numerous gazes looked over. Sure enough, trouble has come. Xiao Qinghe couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he noticed this scene. He wasn't afraid of trouble, but he didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble because of this. Now, Alu had successfully ridiculed everyone as soon as he spoke, and it drew the attention of a large group. Chapter 1055. Most of the people present here were of extraordinary origins, and all of them were renowned geniuses. Yet now, they were ridiculed as pleasant to the eye, but weak to the eye, so they naturally felt uncomfortable in their hearts. But when they saw Alu's rugged appearance and dressing like a barbarian that had walked out from deep within the wilderness, some of them couldn't help but chuckle, and they shook their heads in silence and couldn't be bothered to pay any attention to him. Why pay any attention to a fellow that seems to be extremely vulgar? It's an insult to our identities for no reason. But there was also someone who was displeased and sneered with ridicule. "Bumpkin, what era is it already? You're still wearing extremely simple bee skin, and your words are so vulgar and ignorant. It's simply a disgrace. A person like you dares to look down upon us? Simply laughable." This was a young man that wore a black robe with golden threads, and he was an inheritor of an ancient sect. He had a group of lackeys clustered around him, and he seemed to be extremely cold, arrogant, and noble. Alu was stunned, and then he turned around to ask Xiao Qinghe, "He's insulting me?" Xiao Qinghe hurriedly said, "Don't act rashly. Fighting and killing are prohibited in the undying forbidden grounds. Once you do, you'll be expelled by the rules of the Grand Tao here. At that time, you won't be able to participate in the competition for the minor titans." Before he could finish speaking, the black-robed young man laughed with ridicule and interrupted him. "So it turns out that you're an idiot that doesn't know anything." Alu grinned and revealed 2 rows of snow-white teeth, and his rugged face carried dense disdain as he spat fiercely towards the black-robed young man and cursed. "Bastard, Grandpa will definitely smash your balls apart when we ascend the mountain later. This fellow is really vulgar." Everyone present here frowned. This was the undying divine mountain, and all the young people present here were dazzling figures that were dragons and phoenixes amongst men. How could they have imagined that someone would actually spit so vulgarly? On the other hand, some of the young women opened their eyes wide when they heard Alu's ferocious and swift words, and they didn't dare imagine that someone would dare speak such filthy words before their faces. "You, how presumptuous!" The black-robed young man's nose was almost crooked from anger. If he hadn't dodged in time earlier, then that mouthful of spit would have almost stuck onto his body, and just thinking about it caused him to feel disgusted. Alu rolled his eyes and said with disdain, "So what if I'm presumptuous? Grandpa is a man of my word. If I don't beat you to death, I'm not your grandpa." Everyone was speechless when they heard this. This fellow really knew how to take advantage of others. Regardless of whether he killed the other party or not, he still considered himself to be the other party's grandfather. His mouth was really sharp, Seeing that the black-robed young man was about to go mad with anger, Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe hurriedly took action together and dragged Alu to another area in the distance. Alu was a little displeased and grumbled. "Why did you pull me? In terms of cursing, not even the descendants of the true Howl are my opponent. You all know how freakish the true Howl bloodline is, able to shatter mountains and rivers just by opening their mouths, making the sun and moon tremble. However, when they encounter me, they can only run after being cursed at." As he finished speaking, he couldn't help but become complacent. Obviously, he was proud of his skill in cursing. At this moment, Xiao Qinghe finally understood why he was always angered to the point of wanting to beat Aru up. It turned out that this fellow was actually a blabbermouth. At the foot of the undying godly mountain, there were many heaven's favorites from different ancient orthodoxies. Therefore, they all gathered in groups of 3 to 5, each occupying their own space and minding their own business. The area where Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe were was relatively deserted with only a dozen people. Originally, Lin Sun thought that he could finally have some peace and quiet. Unexpectedly, a female practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan suddenly screamed and ran towards him. "My God, it's you, Demon Lin. You're here too. Can I ask you some questions?" "Don't worry. If you don't want to answer, I won't force you." Her red lips were like fire, her beautiful eyes were like ripples, and her appearance was charming and attractive. But at this time, she looked excessively excited. "What? He's that Demon Lin? It's him? No way. That barbarian is Demon Lin? His speech is too vulgar." "Idiot, Demon Lin is the young man next to the barbarian." There was a commotion in the field. All eyes gathered from all directions and fell on Lin Sun with curiosity, surprise, and suspicion. Alu's previous performance was so eye-catching that they couldn't recognize Lin Sun at first. It was not until then that they realized who Lin Sun was. Demon Lin. This name could be described as hot in the Dongshan territory, which caused a lot of waves and attracted the attention of all parties. But at this moment, it was hard for them to associate the handsome and quiet Lin Sun with the rumored demon god Lin, who was incomparably ferocious and mighty. The contrast was so great that it was hard to imagine. "You're that Demon Lin?" Even Alu was surprised. He looked at Lin Sun up and down and said, "But why do you look like a gigolo?" Lin Sun was speechless and said to the female practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan, "I want some peace and quiet now. Please leave." The coquettish female practitioner was not discouraged. On the contrary, she was quite cheeky. She approached Lin Sun with a smile and said, "Don't. I only want to ask 3 questions. I'll leave after that." Lin Sun frowned and felt a headache. He really couldn't understand why the Wind Whisperer clan was so keen on inquiring about information. "Aren't you afraid of offending me?" Lin Sun said expressionlessly. "I'm not afraid. Anyway, fighting is not allowed in the immortal forbidden area, and I believe you won't attack a weak girl like me for no reason, right?" The coquettish woman looked sly and rascally. Lin Sun sighed. When he was about to say something, Alu strode forward and said, "You're called Demon Lin, but you can't even handle a girl. Watch me." As he said, he stretched out his bronze-colored arm, which was as thick as a rock, and held the coquettish woman's slender waist. He put his stubbled face in front of the woman, took a deep breath, and showed a wretched and intoxicated smile, saying, "Girl, you smell so good. Ask me if you have any questions. I'm sure I can satisfy you." The coquettish woman was stunned at first, and then let out a scream. She ran away with a pair of slender legs. Alu laughed, stroked his chin, and said, "What a big butt. If I carry this girl back to the village to be my wife, she must be very fertile." Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe looked at each other, and a thought emerged in their minds at the same time. A wicked person would be tortured by another wicked person. After all the strong people in the field were the dazzling figures of the younger generation. After the initial surprise, they withdrew their eyes and no longer paid attention to Lin Sun. However, they couldn't ignore it in their hearts. After all, this was Demon Lin, a top figure who could stir up trouble in the Shihing boundary and also rise to fame in the Dongxing boundary. His strength had long been proved by many facts. Who dared to ignore him? However, taking him seriously didn't mean being afraid of him. Although Demon Lin was strong, they didn't admit that they were weaker than him. The fact that they dared to participate in the ranking of junior giants was enough to prove how confident they were in their own strength. So you're a Demon Lin. Suddenly, a man in a white robe sat cross-legged on a rock. His hair was red like fire, and he was sitting cross-legged. His eyes were closed, and his aura was as dull as a rock, which was not eye-catching at all. But when he opened his eyes and looked at Lin Sun, it was as if a scorching sun came out of the sky, which made everyone present change their faces. Laughing at the heavens, the frenzied blade, even some of the top figures in the field who were extremely conceited revealed solemn expressions at this moment. In their hearts, laughing at the heavens was undoubtedly an extremely terrifying competitor. Lin Sun had exchanged glances with laughing at the heavens from afar, so he wasn't surprised to see him again. He met laughing at the heavens' gaze without hesitation, shrugged, and said, "Titles are given by others. I have no choice even if I don't want to. You don't want to call yourself a demon god, and I don't want to call myself a frenzied blade either. After all, these titles are nothing to me. However, I'm looking forward to having a match with you." Laughing at the heavens smiled freely. His red hair fluttered in the wind, and his long and narrow eyes were frighteningly bright like the edge of a blade. He gave off an aura that looked down on the world, and there was an unconcealable, peerless sharpness in his every move. He was indeed outstanding and unique. After he finished speaking, he ignored Lin Sun and closed his eyes. His aura fell into silence, like a blazing sun lying dormant in the eternal night. Many powerhouses in the field couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The aura laughing at the heavens revealed just now was too strong, and they also felt a lot of pressure. At the same time, they looked at Lin Sun with a trace of complexity in their eyes. Since laughing at the heavens arrived here, he had occupied a place by himself. No one had aroused his interest, but Lin Sun made him take the initiative to speak. This undoubtedly proved that in laughing at the heavens' eyes, Demon God Lin was a worthy opponent. What a cocky fellow. Alu glanced sideways at laughing at the heavens and muttered. In this inharmonious atmosphere, his words were undoubtedly very conspicuous. Everyone was stunned. This barbarian was truly daring. However, to their disappointment, laughing at the heavens seemed to turn a deaf ear to him. He didn't open his eyes, nor did he pay attention to Alu's provocative words. Alu seemed to be a little disappointed. He curled his lips and didn't say anything more. How much longer do we have to wait? Lin Sun looked at the immortal god mountain that towered into the sky. About 2 more days. 2 days later, the great Tao prohibition on this mountain will disappear and allow us to ascend the mountain. Xiao Qinghe answered. Lin Sun replied with a "oh." He was puzzled. Didn't they say that Zhao Jingxian had already arrived? Why didn't he see any trace of her? The people of Heaven's Pivot Holy Land are here, someone said. Hearing this, everyone looked into the distance and saw a golden-robed young man, surrounded by a group of men and women, rushing towards them. This golden-robed young man was handsome and slender. He was bathed in golden light, and his blood and chi were astonishing. When he walked, faint dragon roars and tiger roars could be heard around him. His calm and elegant temperament made many geniuses of sex feel inferior. Chu Beihai. Chapter 1056. The enmity between Lin Sun and the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land had been formed since they were in the Green Deer Academy of Xiao Empire. But the real enmity was caused in the ancient Song province where the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land was located. And the root of the trouble was Chu Beihai. At the Jade Flame City Stone Appraisal Conference, Chu Beihai launched an operation to kill Lin Sun, causing the matter to become more and more serious. Therefore, when he saw Chu Beihai, the mastermind behind the scenes, appear, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a wisp of killing intent. Demon God Lin, how dare you show yourself here? At the same time, Chu Beihai saw Lin Sun as well. His eyes suddenly shot out a fiery golden light and locked on a Lin Sun from afar. The geniuses from different ancient orthodoxies nearby revealed strange expressions when they saw this. They all knew about the enmity between Lin Sun and the Heaven's pivot holy land, so they naturally understood that Chu Beihai's reaction was reasonable. "Why can't I come?" Lin Sun spoke indifferently, and his black eyes were deep like an abyss. "Speaking of which, you should feel lucky that you didn't attack me in the ancient Song province. Otherwise, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to come today." The two of them confronted each other, causing the atmosphere here to suddenly become oppressive. "Cut the crap. Since you're here today, you're bound to die. I'll leave my words here." Chu Beihai's face was gloomy, and his words were powerful. His aura surged, his clothes fluttered, and his entire body was bathed in dazzling golden light. At that time, Lin Sun killed countless descendants of the Heaven's pivot holy land in the ancient Song province, and even an old monster of the King realm was trapped and killed. Even Zhang Zheng and Xue Qianhen, two core disciples, were completely crippled. How could Chu Beihai endure such deep hatred? Everyone gasped, and they realized that great waves were bound to be stirred up in the competition for the junior titans this time. Alu laughed loudly and said as if he wanted to see the world in chaos, "Who is this guy?" "Demon God Lin. Don't be a coward or I'll look down on you." Xiao Qinghe frowned instead, and he reminded via voice transmission. "It's utterly impossible to determine life and death within the deathless forbidden area due to being restrained by the laws and order of the heavens and the earth. Since this fellow dares to speak like this, then he's surely waiting for you to leave before making a move. I suspect that when the time comes, it won't be just Chu Beihai attacking alone. It's extremely likely that the old fellows from the Heaven's pivot sacred ground will join in as well." Lin Sun nodded with a calm look. Ever since he had entered the ancient desolation realm, he had been hunted countless times. He had gotten used to it. Moreover, he had a strong backing this time, so he wouldn't take this threat seriously. Humph! Chu Beihai withdrew his gaze and ignored Lin Sun and the others. Compared with killing Lin Sun, he was more concerned about the competition for the junior tycoon ranking. In the following period of time, batches after batches of Heaven's prides arrived. There were successors from the ancient orthodoxies and sage families of the East Victory Domain. There were also outstanding figures from the Western Hung Domain, the Northern Dipper Domain, and the Southern Profound Domain. Following this, quite a bit of commotion arose in the surroundings. When some peerless, influential figures appeared, they would even attract the attention of the audience. For example, Yi Chun, the descendant of the Yi clan of the Crepe Myrtle Mountain in the Northern Dipper realm. This young man, who was known as the Sword Demon, drew the attention of everyone the moment he made an appearance. He wore a purple robe, and his black hair was as smooth as silk. His straight and thin figure was like a sword that could pierce through the sky. As his black eyes opened and closed, a terrifying scene of thousands of swords bursting forth was reflected. All the experts who were swept by his eyes felt as if their souls were being cut apart. The appearance of the sword demon, Yi Chen, also attracted the attention of Laughing at the Heavens. Their gazes collided in midair, and it was like the clash of swords and sabers. "You shouldn't have come," said Laughing at the Heavens. His words were direct, domineering, and fierce. "Are you afraid that I'll suppress you and remove your name from the title of Sword and Saber Duel?" Yi Chen's tone was flat, but it had its own fierceness that was as frightening as a sword. Laughing at the Heavens chuckled. He closed his eyes and said nothing, as if he was ignoring Yi Chun. The sword demon Yi Chun shrugged and didn't take it seriously. After that, he suddenly made a sound of surprise and looked at Lin Sun, who was on the other side. A playful smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he said, "Demon God Lin, I really didn't misjudge you outside the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival. I really look forward to your participation in the Minor Tycoon list." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "You met me at the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival?" The sword demon Yi Chun smiled and said, "That's not important. What's important is that I really appreciate what you've done. If there's a chance, I'll fight you. No matter if you win or lose, I'll treat you to 3 cups of wine. The first cup is to my liking, the second cup is to your liking, and the third cup is to our liking." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, "Since we're going to drink, why do we have to fight?" Yi Chen laughed and asked in reply, "If we're going to drink, how can we not fight to our heart's content first?" As soon as he finished speaking, he sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. He actually started meditating and paid no attention to the various gazes around him. If it were others, they might feel that it was very unsightly to sit on the ground, which was not in line with the identity of a peerless figure whose name shook the whole world. But Yi-Chen obviously didn't care about this. He only cared about his own mind, which was to follow his heart and act according to his heart. The same was true of his sword. All of a sudden, everyone looked at Lin Sun in a different way. Since Lin Sun first arrived here, he had been very ordinary. He didn't stand out and didn't attract attention. But when people learned about his identity, there were bursts of restlessness in the field. At that time, although many geniuses attached importance to Lin Sun, they didn't think they were inferior to Lin Sun, so they soon calmed down. However, as Laughing Heaven took the initiative to talk to Lin Sun, many geniuses felt that it was unusual and valued Lin Sun more and more. At this time, when they saw sword demon Yi-Chen didn't hide his attention and appreciation to Lin Sun, those geniuses from different orthodoxies finally couldn't calm down. Did this mean that in the eyes of the two most dazzling figures in the Big Dipper world, Demon God Lin was already on an equal footing with them? This was too amazing, and this caused Alu to murmur discontentedly, "Another arrogant guy." Everyone's faces were filled with black lines. This barbarian was simply asking for a beating to the extreme. They'd never seen someone with such an annoying mouth. As time went by, more and more geniuses came to the foot of the immortal mountain, making the atmosphere more and more oppressive. Many of the conversations unconsciously became much quieter. Everyone expected that the Junior Giants list this time was really different from the past. Not only were there a large number of participants, but there were also many geniuses and strong people. There was no lack of top figures like Laughing Heaven and Yi-Chen, who had already dominated a region. This made many Heaven's favorites' hearts feel heavy, and the pressure they felt multiplied. In the past Junior Giants list, it was rare for so many top figures to participate in it at the same time. The people of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect are here. On the morning of the second day after Lin Sun's arrival, there was a stir in the field, and everyone looked in the same direction. In the extremely distant sky, numerous strands of sword light whistled over like gorgeous divine rays of light, and they were dazzling, blazing, fierce, and terrifying. Then, these sword lights suddenly stopped in the void, and a group of men and women appeared. The person in the lead was a thin man that wore a golden crown and feathered clothes. His entire body was brimming with heroic spirit and revealed an indescribably fierce and domineering aura. Being stared at by him was like being struck by lightning, and it caused one's heart to tremble involuntarily. Jin Muyan. He was the leader of the 13 swords of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect and held the Brahma sword. He was the leader of the core disciples of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect. If Yun Qingbai was the leader of the previous generation of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect, then Jin Muyun was the most amazing swordsman of the current generation of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect. In terms of talent and physique, he was not much inferior to Yun Qingbai. Jin Muyun was very young, at most in his 20s, but he had cultivated a domineering swordsmanship that was sharp and domineering. Overall, this person's reputation was not inferior to extraordinary figures like Laughing at the Heavens and Sword Devil Yi-Chen. There were even busybodies who saw him as the second Yun Qingbai of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect. There was a stir in the field, and countless gazes were attracted by Jin Muyun. This genius of swordsmanship, who was regarded as the Brahma sword, undoubtedly had a graceful bearing and background that made people have no choice but to pay attention to him. In comparison, the group of men and women of the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect around him was slightly dim, and the limelight was completely overshadowed by Jin Muyun. Lin Sun also noticed this person. Moreover, Xiaoqinga had already told him about Jin Muyun's background. He is indeed a powerful figure. Lin Sun commented in his heart and withdrew his gaze. Although Jin Muyun was strong, he was not Yun Qingbai. However, to Lin Sun's and everyone else's surprise, The moment Jin Muyun arrived, he swept his gaze across the field and said coldly, "Is demon god Lin here?" His voice was like a sword, sonorous and reverberating in the surroundings, causing piercing pain in one's eardrums and making one's heart tremble. Subconsciously, many gazes looked towards where Lin Sun was, and there was more or less a trace of surprise in their expressions. The matter of Lin Sun charging into the white jade capital's 12 floors alone a while ago had already caused a sensation in the world. It was known to every household in Dongsheng Domain, including women and children. To the heaven-reaching sword sect, it was destined that they would not have any good impression of Lin Sun. However, many people did not expect that the moment Jin Muyun arrived, he would point his spear at Lin Sun. "You are demon god Lin." The aura around Jin Muyun was fierce and domineering. His eyes were like sharp swords as he stared at Lin Sun. "How dare you snatch my senior brother Yun's night flower sword? This crime is destined to be unforgivable." Everyone was shocked. First, there was Chu Beihai, and then there was Jin Muyun. Both of them actually wanted to kill demon god Lin. Moreover, Jin Muyun's performance was even more domineering and direct. Of course, the most shocking thing was that demon god Lin had actually snatched Yun Qingbai's sword from back then. That was a famous sword that had once beheaded hundreds of half-step King Realm experts. Faced with the aggressive, fierce, and domineering Jin Muyun, Lin Sun could not help but roll his eyes. He said, "Isn't it easy to die? Don't be anxious. After I kill Chu Beihai, I'll send you on your way." Chapter 1057. Chu Beihai's face darkened at Lin Sun's words. He said coldly, "Lin Sun, I'll let you die a horrible death just because of what you said." Jin Muyun's eyes were as cold as swords. Lin Sun's words were full of contempt. Obviously, Jin Muyun didn't take him seriously. Arrogance comes at a price. "When the time comes, I will use your blood to warm the wine, and your soul to wipe the edge of my sword." Jin Muyun said word by word, full of killing intent. He gave off a domineering aura, which made many people's faces change slightly. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it. He asked, "People say you're the second Yun Qingbai. Let me ask you, have you ever defeated Yun Qingbai's record?" Jin Muyun narrowed his eyes slightly, and a shadow appeared between his eyebrows imperceptibly. On the other hand, the expressions of everyone here had become strange. There was no need to guess the answer. If Jin Muyun had broken Yun Qingbai's record in the 12th floor, it would have caused a sensation in White Jade Capital and been known to the world. But obviously he hadn't. It was Lin Sun who had broken 5 of Yun Qingbai's records. That's just the record set by senior brother Yin 10 years ago. What's there to be proud of? Jin Muyun said coldly. "I'm not proud. I'm just thinking you can't even break Yun Qingbai's record 10 years ago. Why do you have to talk big?" At the end of his words, Lin Sun's voice carried an invisible power. His voice was like a clap of thunder, shaking Jin Muyun's ears fiercely. Jin Muyun's heart twitched imperceptibly, and his expression was uncertain. "Don't be arrogant. Lin Sun, are you stupid enough to think that you can be lawless just because you broke senior brother Yun's record 10 years ago? Arrogant and reckless." Beside Jin Muyun, a group of heaven-reaching sword sect talents criticized Lin Sun. Lin Sun turned to Alu and said, "Do me a favor." "What favor?" Alu was stunned. "Scold them," Lin Sun said. "Don't you scare the Zhanho branch with your scolding skills? This is the perfect time to show your strength." Alu's lips twitched, and he shouted, "Devil Lin, damn you! What do you take me for? A shrew? What's more, even if I were to scold them, these guys aren't qualified to be scolded by me. Why don't you take a look at their morals? Scolding them would only dirty my mouth." Lin Sun couldn't help but feel amused. Alu was indeed a natural candidate for shooting his mouth off. As soon as he opened his mouth, he achieved the effect of scolding a group of people. As for the Heavenly Sword sect side, everyone's faces, including Jin Muyun's, darkened. This barbarian actually said that they were not qualified to be scolded by him. This was simply going too far. Alu hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand. I'm not scolding you. I'm scolding you for not being qualified to be scolded by me. Do you understand?" Pucci. Many people couldn't help but laugh. Jin Muyun and the rest were so angry that their faces turned green. They had originally thought that Lin Sun was timid and asking for help. Who would have thought that would be a barbarian who didn't care about anything scolding them? Furthermore, his words were simply too vicious. I can tell that you've misunderstood. I despise and despise you, but I'm not in the mood to scold you. After all, not everyone is qualified to be scolded by me. You should understand now, right? Alu explained very patiently, but the more he acted like this, the more uncontrollably the laughter resounded. Even Lin Sun and Xiao Qinghe sighed with emotion. What was a natural king of shooting his mouth off? Alu was one. There were also some people who were stupefied and looked as if they had seen a ghost. This barbarian was definitely a weirdo who would infuriate others to death. He didn't even use vulgarities when scolding others, but it was like a knife that pierced one's heart. Enough! Jimian couldn't help but be angry as well. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his whole body surged with a terrifying killing intent, causing the atmosphere to suddenly become oppressive. Just you wait. His eyes surged with a terrifying sharpness, and he was incomparably cold. Obviously, he was really angry. Alu was just about to say something when he was stopped by Lin Sun. It was useless to say anything more at this moment. Alas, how did things turn out like this? Alu sighed. Because your mouth is annoying, Xiao Qinghe answered. Then, there were signs of a quarrel between the two. Lin Sun could only mediate between them, and he was very busy. This farce passed in the blink of an eye. No matter what, the arrival of Jin Muyun's group had caused the geniuses of the various sects present to realize that Demon God Lin's appearance this time was probably going to cause another great wave. However, before Lin Sun could calm down for a while, what happened next made him frown. This was because quite a few old acquaintances had arrived. Yu Lingkong, dressed in a jade robe and wearing a feather crown on his head, came to the scene like a dream, and his tall figure was surrounded by crystal light, which caused a commotion. He was also accompanied by some talents of the pure land of longevity. As soon as he arrived, he attracted the attention of all the people present. But Yu Lingkong only looked at Lin Sun with an indifferent and cold look. He said a sentence full of killing intent. Lin Sun, you're the only one who can do that. Lin Sun, I'll repay you 10 times for what you did last time. His words shocked all the people present. Lin Sun said, "Oh," calmly. The successors of Sangmei Taoism sect in Shihing Domain had also arrived. The leader was a man named Li Qingping. When he sensed Lin Sun's presence, he only asked one question. "Did you kill my younger brother, Li Qinghuan?" Lin Sun nodded. Li Qingping said "good" 3 times in a row, and the killing intent in his words made many strong people's hair stand on end. Before long, a black-robed young man appeared, emitting a biting cold current all over his body. He looked at Lin Sun with a cold smile and said casually, "My name is Go Yinjin. Go Xuxing asked me to kill you this time. Although I'm a little reluctant, Go Xuxing is a descendant of our black demon dog tribe after all. Moreover, many strong people of our tribe have died in your hands, so I have no choice but to agree reluctantly." Go Yinjin, a top strong man of the black demon dog tribe regarded as the 10,000 killer, was also a murderous devil that made countless practitioners pale at the mention of. With his appearance, the strong people of all the big orthodoxies all showed a look of fear or disgust. But when Go Yinjin pointed his spear at Lin Sun, everyone's expression changed subtly. Being targeted by the black demon dog tribe would definitely not end well. In this regard, Lin Sun just smiled and said, "You came at the right time. I happen to be short of black dog meat recently." Go Yinjin smiled grimly and made a beheading gesture to Lin Sun. Then he ignored Lin Sun. At this time, many people looked at Lin Sun with a complicated expression, some gloating and some pity. It was true that Lin Sun was the most popular among the young generation of Dongsheng world a few days ago. But at the same time, his rise was accompanied by countless disturbances and troubles. Just like now, the competition for the junior giants had attracted the hostility of Chu Beihai, Jin Muyun, Li Qingping, Yu Lingkong, Go Yinjin, and other peerless figures. They unceremoniously expressed that they would make Lin Sun suffer this time, Anyone who saw this scene was bound to have all kinds of thoughts. It turns out that you have offended so many people. Alu was very surprised. Do you think his title of devil is just for show? Xiaoqing has said angrily. In fact, he was extremely worried in his heart. The development of the situation was also beyond his expectation. Seeing Lin Sun being targeted like this, it was difficult for him to stay calm. Only Lin Sun smiled disapprovingly and said, "They're just some old opponents. Since they still dare to jump out, it can only prove one thing. They haven't learned their lesson and forgotten the painful lessons of the past." His voice was casual, but with a touch of coldness. How could he not be angry when being targeted like this? If he was not limited by the order of nature of the four forbidden lands, he would absolutely not endure it like this. He had secretly decided that after leaving this place, he would find a chance to kill all these guys. Do you need help? Suddenly, Sword Demon Chen opened his eyes from meditation and asked Lin Sun directly, ignoring the strange eyes around him. The atmosphere suddenly changed. The expressions of Chu Beihai, Yu Linkong, Jin Muyun, and the other powerhouses changed accordingly. If Sword Demon Chun intervened in this matter, it would be a little troublesome. To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun said casually, "No need. If you really want to drink after we deal with them, I don't mind getting drunk with you." Chen was also stunned. He didn't expect Lin Sun to refuse him so directly. Then, a smile appeared on his lips. In the end, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. His voice shook the world. "Okay, but before we get drunk, you have to survive first." Chen said, "Just wait for the good wine you have prepared." Lin Sun smiled. "Arrogant." Chu Beihai snorted coldly. Jin Muyun, Yu Linkong, and the others also sneered. They didn't believe that Lin Sun could survive this time. The people of Spirit Treasure Holy Land are here. At this moment, someone said. Suddenly, many people's gazes became more and more strange. Because just a few days ago, Lin Sun had just made a mess in Mabai province. Not only did he seriously injure Su'er, who had set foot on the second tribulation of longevity, but he also hung a group of descendants of Spirit Treasure Holy Land on the top of the city wall of Wuling as a show of force. This was equivalent to slapping the face of Spirit Treasure Holy Land, which made this ancient orthodoxy furious. They couldn't wait to pull out Lin Sun's tendons, skin him, and grind his bones to ashes. Now, the descendants of Spirit Treasure Holy Land also came to participate in the ranking of junior giants. It could be imagined that they were destined to be unhappy with Lin Sun. However, Lin Sun didn't care about this. At this moment, he also looked over, and there was a rare trace of inexplicable tension in his heart. Soon, a familiar slender figure came into view. The person was dressed in a purple dress with bright eyes and white teeth. Her eyebrows were picturesque. Her black hair was tied up in a bun with a green wooden hairpin, revealing a bright and clear face that was both angry and happy. She was charming, and there was a valiant and charming air in her every movement. Her beauty was fresh and refined, which was different from the world. Zhao Jingxian. With just a glance, Lin Sun couldn't help but recall the scenes of his contact with Zhao Jingxian in the past, which made his mood fluctuate and a strange emotion spread. She was still as beautiful as before, and her appearance was even better than before. Chapter 1058. Zhao Jingxian came with the heirs of the numinous treasure Holy Land. When Lin Sun's gaze and mind were attracted by Zhao Jingxian, the gazes of the prodigies of the various orthodoxies were attracted by the man beside Zhao Jingxian. This man was dressed in snow-white clothes, and he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His figure was aloof like a pine tree on a cliff, and his clothes fluttered as he walked. He had a restrained and peerless bearing. His eyes were calm, and a faint smile hung on the corners of his mouth. He seemed like a refreshing spring breeze, but in fact, he gave others a feeling of unreachable distance. He seemed so extraordinary that even figures like Laughing at the Heavens and Yechun were alarmed. When they saw this man's appearance clearly, a strange expression flashed in their eyes. In the eyes of peerless figures like them, this white-clothed man had a different bearing. His seemingly thin figure actually contained a disdainful and domineering aura. This was an aura of absolute confidence that looked down on everything. It was like a king patrolling his own territory, possessing an inviolable divine might. Yin Zhanxiu. A name appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. This man, who was dressed in snow-white clothes and had an extraordinary bearing, was like a legend. He was the current saint of the numinous treasure Holy Land, and he was born in the Yin clan. Rumor had it that his mother's clan was related to the bloodline of the ancient True Dragon. He was born with a dragon-scaled Taoist pattern on his back, and he mastered the 8-division Heavenly Dragon Tao. He was crowned as the undefeatable True Dragon. Now, he was ranked 3rd among the 10 peerless figures of the Eastern Victory World. Who dared to ignore such a peerless figure who could be said to be top-notch in terms of birth, background, foundation, and combat strength? Alu's eyes suddenly lit up, and a wisp of imperceptible, blazing battle intent flashed through them. It was as if he'd found an opponent that was strong enough to excite him. Xiaoqing's scalp went numb, and he felt something was wrong. He didn't expect that Yin Zhanxiu would really come. However, only Lin Sun ignored Yin Zhanxiu. It wasn't intentional, but his attention and thoughts were on Zhao Jingxian. At the same time, Zhao Jingxian noticed Lin Sun as well, and she was slightly stunned. Her clear eyes opened wide, while ripples flowed within them, and a wisp of a smile unconsciously suffused the corners of her moist and plump lips. After that, her ink-black brows knit together while her lips parted slightly, and she sent a voice transmission. "Aren't you a little too audacious? You caused such a great calamity, yet you still dare to come here?" Her voice was as clear as a stream, pleasing to the ear. Lin Sun smiled silently. The familiar words carried the same concern as before, which made his slightly nervous state of mind inexplicably relaxed. "Do you know what I did in Mabai province?" Lin Sun asked. "That's why I said you're too bold, and you're even bolder than before." Zhao Jingshuan's clear eyes narrowed as she teased him. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling, remembering that many busybodies called him Bold Lin in Xiao Empire. "Right, you have to be careful. Senior brother Yin heard about what you did, and he even asked me about you." Zhao Jingxian suddenly reminded him. "Although he didn't reveal any emotions at that time, I know he's definitely made up his mind." As she finished speaking, a wisp of worry couldn't help but appear between her brows, and she warned seriously. "So you must be careful." At this moment, Lin Sun had noticed Yin Zhanxiu as well. Even he had to admit that this was an extremely formidable existence that caused him to feel an indescribable pressure. This was the first time he'd felt such a seemingly material pressure since arriving at the foot of the Immortal Mountain, and he instantly realized that Yin Zhanxiu really wasn't someone ordinary peerless figures could compare to. It could even be said that he was the strongest expert that Lin Sun had seen so far that had stepped foot on the apex path. However, Lin Sun quickly collected his thoughts and said, "Don't worry, I've been through all kinds of storms. After leaving the Ultimate, I was chased all over the sky by a group of King Realm old monsters, but I survived in the end. This kind of situation won't scare me." Zhao Jingxian spat, and her clear eyes were filled with both anger and joy as she said, "I didn't realize that you've become so cocky after not seeing you for a few years. Have you been led astray by the narcissistic Old Toad?" Old Toad. Lin Sun was speechless. In terms of narcissism, arrogance, smugness, and shamelessness, he was far inferior to the Old Toad. When this guy was cocky, it was enough to make people and gods angry. Of course, the Old Toad was still in seclusion in the Wordless Pagoda. Otherwise, if it heard Lin Sun's thoughts, it would definitely quarrel with Lin Sun. As they conversed, Yin Zhanxiu brought Zhao Jingxian and the others to the foot of the Immortal Mountain. Many descendants of ancient orthodoxies took the initiative to greet Yin Zhanxiu, which made the place quite lively. Yin Zhanxiu was also very polite and modest as he greeted them one by one. He laughed heartily and said, "This time's Minor Tycoon ranking is really a gathering of stars and talents. It can be said to be an unprecedented grand occasion. At least when I participated in the Minor Tycoon ranking back then, I didn't see so many powerful figures." Most of the people present laughed in agreement. This was a kind of recognition of Yin Zhanqiu's status and strength. It's a pity that I'm already over 30 years old and have already participated in such a competition. Otherwise, I'd really like to have a spar with the fellow Taoists from the Four Great Realms. As soon as Yin Zhanqiu said this, the atmosphere became more relaxed. Only then did many people realize that Yin Zhanqiu was already one of the top 10 tycoons of Dongsheng Domain. Naturally, it was impossible for him to participate in this minor tycoon ranking. Thinking of this, they all breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Senior brother Yin, that guy is Lin's son. Suddenly, a voice that carried dense hatred resounded, and it caused the atmosphere in the surroundings to change. The one who spoke was a young man in a red robe. It was Su Xingfeng. At this moment, his face was gloomy, and he stared at Lin's son in the distance with hatred in his eyes. It was as if he wanted to skin Lin's son alive. A few days ago, he was knocked out by Lin's son and hung on the city wall as a warning to the public. It could be said that he had lost his face and reputation. Sure enough, he came. Everyone had different expressions. They had already expected this scene. Yin Zhanqiu nodded and looked at Lin's son. His robe was whiter than snow, and he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He seemed peaceful, but the moment he looked at Lin's son, an invisible and terrifying power emerged from his figure. The void nearby suddenly let out a wail as if it couldn't bear the weight, and the sky above his head changed color. In an instant, everyone faintly felt that Yin Zhanqiu seemed to have become a different person. He was no longer peaceful and humble, and instead, he showed a domineering aura that could shake the wind and clouds and look down on the universe. That kind of power oppressed many powerhouses to breathe, and Lin's son was the first to bear the brunt. Being oppressed by this kind of power, his body tensed up subconsciously, and his deep black eyes narrowed slightly. His expression was as calm as usual, and he wasn't affected at all. Thinking about it, he didn't know how many old monsters in the King realm he had confronted over the years, and he also didn't know how many terrifying and boundless power he had faced. Although Yin Zhanqiu's power was strong, no matter how strong he was, how could he be stronger than an old monster in the King realm? Therefore, it was naturally impossible for Lin's son to be intimidated. The atmosphere was deathly silent, and the air seemed to have frozen. Although Yin Zhanqiu stood quietly and looked Lin's son up and down, the invisible power from his body made people not dare to make sound. Zhao Jingxian bit her cherry lips lightly, and there was a trace of imperceptible worry in her clear eyes. She was very clear about how powerful Yin Zhanqiu was. If Lin's son was targeted by such a terrifying person, the consequences would be unimaginable. Are you old friends with junior sister Jingxian? After a while, Yin Zhanqiu finally spoke. However, his question left everyone dumbfounded. That's right. Lin's son nodded and met Yin Zhanqiu's gaze calmly. How is your relationship? Yin Zhanqiu asked with interest. Very good, Lin's son said casually. How good? Yin Zhanqiu asked. Better than you can imagine. Lin's son thought for a while and answered seriously. Hearing this question and answer, some people who knew about the relationship between Yin Zhanqiu and Zhao Jingxian revealed a strange expression. They would never forget that one year, a successor of the Saint Hermit Place went to the holy land of numinous treasure to propose marriage to Zhao Jingxian. In the end, Yin Zhanqiu, who was in seclusion, came out. Ignoring the objections of the higher-ups, Yin Zhanqiu beat the successor of the Saint Hermit Place half to death and threw him out of the Sanqing Mountain. At that time, Yin Zhanqiu even said, whoever dares to have designs on Zhao Jingxian in the future will have to go through him first. Otherwise, even if the Emperor of Heaven comes, he will still beat him up. Now, Lin Sun actually said in front of Yin Zhanqiu that he had an unusually good relationship with Zhao Jingxian. This was equivalent to throwing Yin Zhanqiu's gun at him. This demon god Lin is really daring. How dare he have designs on the woman that Yin Zhanqiu regards as his exclusive property? Is he tired of living? Many powerhouses secretly clicked their tongues. When Zhao Jingxian saw this, A hint of embarrassment flashed across her clear and fair face, and there was a hint of rebuke in her clear eyes. She was angry at Lin Sun's straightforwardness and boldness, but she was also worried about the possible consequences of his actions. Junior sister Jing Xian, is what he said true? Yin Zhanqiu's expression was still very calm, and his clear black eyes were as calm as a lake. However, the invisible aura that emanated from his body became more and more terrifying, causing the void around him to collapse inch by inch. One could vaguely see wisps of obscure and terrifying rules of order flashing near the collapsing void. Just a wisp of this rules of order's aura was enough to make one's scalp go numb and feel like their organs were being torn apart. There was no doubt that Yin Zhanqiu's aura was too powerful and dangerous, and it had already triggered a reaction from the rules of heaven and earth here. At this moment, even laughing at the heavens, yet Chun and the other top figures present could not maintain their composure. Just from this scene alone, one could see how powerful Yin Zhanqiu was. However, Yin Zhanqiu seemed to be completely unaware of the rules of order of heaven and earth that emanated a fatal threat, and his eyes were still fixed on Lin Sun. Chapter 10:59. The atmosphere was dead silent. Only the mournful wails from the collapse of the void around Yin Zhanqiu's body could be heard echoing in the air. Lin Sun looked at Zhao Jingxian. At this moment, most people also looked at Zhao Jingxian, waiting for her reply. This reply might make Yin Zhanqiu form some kind of judgment and decide his attitude towards Lin Sun. Perhaps it was a matter of life and death. Zhao Jingxuan's slender and long eyebrows furrowed. She looked at Lin Sun, then at Yin Zhanqiu, who was dressed in snow-white robes. One could clearly see that her clear and pretty face carried a trace of hesitation, annoyance, and helplessness. But in the end, she took a deep breath and seemed to have made some kind of decision. The atmosphere was also extremely tense at this moment. But unexpectedly, before Zhao Jingxian could speak, Yin Zhanqiu suddenly waved his hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry to answer me. It won't be too late to make a decision after you've thought it through." Everyone was stunned, and many people couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Lin Sun also raised his eyebrows. He couldn't understand Yin Zhanqiu. Previously, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous, not because he felt pressured, but because he didn't know what kind of answer Zhao Jingxian would give. But when Yin Zhanqiu stopped all this, Lin Sun was both a little displeased and a little relieved. Perhaps not knowing the answer at this time was not a bad result. He looked at Zhao Jingxian, who was also looking at him with her clear eyes. There was a hint of relief in her eyes, but also an indescribable hint of surprise. "Lin Sun, don't think too much about it." Zhao Jingxuan's pleasant voice sounded in his ears. What am I thinking about?" Lin Sun blinked his eyes. "Keep pretending." Zhao Jingxian narrowed her clear eyes and glared at Lin Sun. There was a hint of annoyance in her voice. Lin Sun touched his nose. He suddenly felt that it was not bad to judge the relationship between them without a reply. "Junior sister Jingxian, come over here. The minor giants ranking battle is about to begin, and there are some things I need to remind you of." Yin Zhanqiu didn't pay any more attention to Lin Sun. That's it. Many people were disappointed. They had thought that Yin Zhanqiu would definitely target Lin Sun to express his stance and stand, whether it was for Zhao Jingxian or for the sake of his sect. But who would have thought that from the beginning to the end, he only asked a few questions that didn't hurt or itch and didn't express anything at all. Chu Beihai, Jin Muyun, Li Qingping, and Go Yinjin also frowned. They couldn't figure out what Yin Zhanqiu was thinking. To be honest, they couldn't wait for Yin Zhanqiu to join them in dealing with Lin Sun. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that Ji Xingyao had also come to the field. She was dressed in a black dress, and her figure was slender and graceful. Her temperament was ethereal and holy, and her exquisite and beautiful facial features were like a masterpiece of God. She had an almost illusory beauty, like a fairy walking out of a painting. She was all alone in a secluded corner. Coupled with the fact that everyone's attention was on Yin Zhanqiu, only a small portion of them noticed her. When did this proud girl become so low-key? Lin Sun was surprised. Others might not know, but he knew very well how powerful Ji Xingyao, the current saintess of Xianwen Swordsmanship House, was. At the same time, Ji Xingyao also noticed Lin Sun's gaze. Her dreamy eyes suddenly burst out a touch of coldness, and she glared at him fiercely. Inexplicable, Lin Sun muttered in his heart. Didn't I just bump into your butt? Why do you still take it to heart now? Ji Xingyao ground her teeth secretly. What's wrong with me? Every time I see this hateful and shameless guy, I can't help but want to beat him up. It's so infuriating. The situation in the field was treacherous, but as time went by, everyone's mind was focused on the upcoming Junior Giants ranking competition. Compared with some disputes and frictions, these talents from the ancient orthodoxies of the four major worlds undoubtedly attached more importance to the upcoming competition on the Immortal Mountain. At this point, all the Sky Prides who were qualified to participate in this competition had already arrived. Laughing at the heavens, Chun, Yu Lingkong. Each of them was domineering, aloof, fierce, or unruly. Every one of them was shining like the stars in the sky. Among the young generation of the four major worlds in the ancient Desolation realm, this girl might be able to represent the highest level of cultivation. Every generation has its own talents. This time, no matter whether you have already become famous or not, this great world is destined to belong to us. Someone sneered in his heart. As talents, they were all proud and conceited, with the belief that they were invincible. Naturally, there were many people who were not convinced by figures like laughing at the heavens in Yechen. I have been waiting for many years. This time, one of the 36 peaks of the Immortal Mountain is destined to belong to me. Some people were excited and complacent. The great world is coming. Only we can stir up the world. Those old guys are destined to wither and die. This is the great world that belongs to us. Some people secretly clenched their fists. It's just a competition for the list of minor giants, but there are already so many talents and bright stars. This scene is really longing for and looking forward to. Seeing the dazzling experts in the field, even Lin Sun felt a surging spirit in his heart. He hadn't looked forward to a battle like this for a long time. After all, Lin Sun was a young man. He was not a monk who had nothing in the world, nor was he a saint who was untainted by worldly affairs. He had emotions and fighting spirit. In the face of so many top figures among his peers, the blood and fighting spirit in his body that had been silent for a long time were opened like a sword sealed in a box. In the past, when facing his peers, or even the half-step king realm, although he fought seriously, he didn't have that kind of hot-blooded expectation in his subconscious fighting instinct, because he knew that he would definitely win. But this time it was different. Not only Lin Sun's fighting spirit and fighting spirit were awakening, but also the other talents in the field. The competition for the list of minor giants was about the fate of the Great Way and the capital to become a king. What's more, if he could be ranked in the top 36, his name was bound to spread throughout the four great realms of the ancient Desolation territory and attract the attention of the world. Attracting the world's wind and clouds was the real prestige. It was true that there were many powerful people participating in this competition, and it was extremely difficult to get on the list. But so long as he was able to accomplish this, then he was already bound to ascend into the top ranks of the younger generation, and even if a great era arrived, it would be sufficient for him to reveal the edge that belonged to him. The talents of a region were nothing at all. Only the talents of a generation were qualified to compete for the world, control the universe, and roam the world proudly in the future. It was hard to say who would become the leading figure of the era after the Great Era came, but at least he must step into the list of minor giants first. Seeing this scene, Yin Zhanxiu couldn't help thinking of the scenes when he participated in the competition for the list of minor giants, and he couldn't help sighing with emotion. He could be regarded as the top figure of the previous generation and belonged to the same category as Yin Qingbai, Wang Xuanyu, Mi Hongzhen, and Yi Mo. However, back then, he was also high-spirited. Although he wasn't as powerful as he was today, he was determined to enter the list of minor giants. Luckily, it's not too late. Yin Zhanxiu thought to himself. He was still young. and he had been suppressing his realm all these years, waiting for the Great Era to come. Moreover, on the path of competing for the fortune of the Great Era, compared to these people in front of him, the top figures of the previous generation like him undoubtedly had a great advantage. This was because they had accumulated and settled more time to cultivate, and they had also obtained more luck of the great Tao. However, Yin Zhanxiu was also clear that many of the people who had entered the list of minor giants like him back then couldn't resist the temptation of advancing to the king stage, and they had already broken through their own realms, either to the half-step king stage or to the real king stage. Although the battle strength of the king stage had reached a level where they could look down on the 5 great realms, at the same time, these people had lost the qualification to become the top figures in the Great Era. Luckily, the Great Era is finally coming. Yin Zhanxiu murmured to himself. Boom! While the Sky Prides were immersed in their own thoughts, time passed by unknowingly. Suddenly, the majestic and immortal God mountain let out a loud roar, as if it had awakened from a long slumber. Then, streaks of dreamlike golden paths unfurled from the 36 mountains all the way to the foot of the mountains. Every golden path shone brilliantly, exuding a sacred and solemn aura of the great Tao. It was grand and magnificent, and it was shocking. The aura that lingered on it contained the power of rules and order, and it would never be extinguished. The battle for the list of minor giants had begun. Let's go. The Sky Prides, who had been waiting for a long time, reacted immediately, and they rushed toward different golden paths. Before this, they had weighed the pros and cons before choosing the peak that they liked. Therefore, the moment they started to ascend the mountain, very few people hesitated. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless prodigies of the various sects flew up the mountain like rainbows in dazzling streaks of light. They only had 30 minutes to ascend the mountain and guard it. Everyone was clear that the immortal God Mountain was extremely tall and majestic. If they didn't hurry, it would be difficult to ascend the mountain, let alone guard it. Moreover, if they ascended the mountain immediately, they wouldn't have to worry about being obstructed by other powerful cultivators, and they could ascend the mountain regardless of the consequences. If they were one step slower, it would be a different story. Once they encountered opponents that they had a grudge against, they would definitely be intercepted and attacked. Even if they weren't eliminated, they would still waste a lot of time and energy, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Chapter 1060. Of course, those who had absolute confidence in their strength did not have to be so anxious. Novels, on the contrary, most of them were not in a hurry to climb the mountain. Instead, they would wait for some time to judge the path chosen by their opponents, and then decide which mountain to climb. In this way, they could avoid some tricky people as much as possible and achieve the purpose of a king doesn't see another king. As for how to judge who should not be provoked, each talent had his own measurement and standard, which couldn't be generalized. For example, in the eyes of some top talents, those top figures were definitely kings who could not be provoked. But in the eyes of the top figures, they had different judgments about each other's combat power and cultivation. Lin Sun, I'll go first. Xiao Qinghe made a judgment, waved his hand to Lin Sun, and then turned around and swept towards one of the golden paths. Boring. Isn't it the same no matter which path I take? As Alu said, he also strode forward. His figure, which was as tall as a mountain, rushed straight to the nearest mountain path, which seemed very simple and rough. Lin Sun, you have to be on guard. Although there are many strong practitioners from the ancient orthodoxies who come to participate in the competition, each orthodoxy can only pin its hope on one of the most powerful successors. Zhao Jingxuan's warning sounded in Lin Sun's ears. As for the others, although they are also qualified to participate in the competition, they are just sparring partners. Sparring partners? Lin Sun asked. Yes, don't underestimate them. These sparring partners have other purposes. First, it is to prevent the strongest practitioners of their sects from being besieged and obstructed by other sections. Second, it is to besiege and obstruct the strongest practitioners of other sects. According to Zhao Jingxian, the competition on the list of junior giants would never be as simple as individual combat power. In order to ensure that their successors could be ranked in the top 36 on the list of junior giants, the ancient orthodoxies would send many core disciples to participate in the competition to protect one of the strongest practitioners. In this way, there would be no need to worry about being besieged in the competition of climbing the mountain or guarding the mountain. Similarly, there was competition and hostility between the ancient orthodoxies. It was inevitable that they would target each other and play dirty tricks on each other. In the past, similar things often happened. Simply put, this competition for the minor tycoon rankings was a competition of individual combat strength, and it was also an invisible battle between the strengths of the various sections. According to Zhao Jingshuan's judgment, Lin Sun was a loner and had made enemies with many heirs. When he climbed the mountain, he was bound to be stared at by many evil eyes. Therefore, she reminded Lin Sun at the first time, lest Lin Sun should be careless and fail miserably. "Don't worry, I can't wait for them to do that." A cold smile appeared on the corner of Lin Sun's mouth. He glanced at Chu Beihai, Jin Muyun, Li Qingping, Yu Linkong, Go Yinjin, and others who hadn't taken action yet. After that, he withdrew his gaze and chose a golden path that led to the peak of the mountain. His clothes fluttered in the wind as he flashed up it. This guy's going to go berserk again. Looks like he's been targeted time and time again, causing him to be very unhappy and furious. Zhao Jingxian was stunned. Her clear eyes rippled while her clear and pretty face was suffused with a wisp of helplessness. Although they hadn't seen each other for several years, no one knew Lin Sun's character better than her. This guy was never one who would swallow humiliation. "Let's go." Watching Lin Sun's departing figure, a strong killing intent flashed across Chu Beihai's eyes. Immediately, several successors of the divine pivot holy land beside him began to take action and rushed towards the mountain path Lin Sun had chosen. "Remember, stop this guy at all costs." Li Qingping ordered the successors of the Taoism sect of Tsangmei beside him. On the immortal mountain, even if there was a conflict and life and death was determined, there would be no real death. Because this was the immortal mountain, even if the body was blown up and the soul was destroyed, it was just a fake death. The rules and order of the immortal mountain would save them. In short, it was impossible for the practitioners who climbed the immortal mountain to die completely, even if they wanted to. Of course, after fake death, they would be eliminated. He's just a nobody from the mortal world. How dare he think about the list of junior giants? What a wishful thinking. You should know what to do, right? Deep hatred flashed across Yu Linkong's eyes. He couldn't forget the humiliation Lin Sun brought him at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. Next to him, a group of successors of the pure land of longevity took the order and set out. "I don't need you to protect me, nor do I need you to help me deal with other forces. What you need to do is to stop this little bastard. Don't let him succeed in guarding the mountain." Go Yinjin's black robe was fluttering, and his scarlet eyes were full of coldness. Whether in the Western boundary or the Dongsheng boundary, there were many strong practitioners of the Dark Tengu who died in Lin Sun's hands. Even if Go Fuxing didn't ask for help this time, Go Yinjin wouldn't sit back and do nothing. "Do you see? There are so many forces who want to deal with this guy. Our heaven-reaching sword sect can't be left behind. You go too. It's time to teach this devil Lin a painful lesson." Jin Muyun's voice was sonorous and decisive. Many successors of the ancient orthodoxies set out one after another, and the mountain path they chose was exactly the same as Lin Sun's, which made many strong practitioners present look strange. Before, they had already guessed that Lin Sun was bound to encounter an unexpected blow on this mountain. But they didn't expect that the ancient orthodoxies had already shown their sharp fangs just at the beginning. There's only 30 minutes left. Being targeted and suppressed like this, does Devil Lin still have a chance to make it to the list of junior giants? Some practitioners of the ancient orthodoxies who had maintained a neutral attitude couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they saw this. They were not optimistic about Lin Sun's trip. They've gone too far. Is this the demeanor of the ancient orthodoxies? Zhao Jingxian also witnessed this scene. She frowned, and a touch of disgust, mockery, and anger emerged in her clear eyes. Could it be that everything is predetermined? Since he has provoked so many enemies, these are the consequences that he should bear. Yin Zhanxiu put his hands behind his back, and his figure was as aloof as a cliff. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his expression was calm and indifferent. Zhao Jingxian was just about to say something when she saw the successors of the Holy Land of Lingbao also set out at this moment. The mountain path they chose was also the same as Lin Sun's. Senior brother Yin, is this your idea? Zhao Jingxuan's heart shook, and a storm was set off in her heart. Yin Zhanxiu avoided answering her question. He pointed to a mountain path in the distance and said, Junior sister Jingxian, we only have 30 minutes to climb the mountain. We can't afford any delay. I've already chosen the most suitable path for you. Look, it's that one. Zhao Jingxuan's beautiful face flickered, and she stared at Yin Zhanxiu with her clear eyes. There seemed to be a pair of burning torches in the depths of her pupils. You've disappointed me. In the end, she only said this calmly. Her tone was like a pool of stagnant water, without any ripples or emotional fluctuations. After that, Zhao Jingxian turned around and left, without looking at Yin Zhanxiu again. Her graceful and slender figure carried a hint of stubbornness. Yin Zhanxiu silently watched her figure disappear into the golden mountain path. After a while, he suddenly sighed softly and shook his head without saying a word. However, when he looked at the mountain path Lin Sun had chosen, he had already regained his usual calmness and indifference. It's still not enough after all. Yin Zhanxiu quickly withdrew his gaze. Before coming here, he had learned about Lin Sun, and he knew that the reason why Lin Sun could repeatedly escape danger was because of two things. One was the king's Way Forbidden Formation. The other was the Saint Treasure. On this immortal god mountain, everyone was restricted by the rules and order. No one could set up a formation, let alone use the Saint Treasure. This was equivalent to cutting off Lin Sun's biggest reliance. Under such circumstances, it was not easy for him to climb the mountain, let alone succeed in guarding the mountain. Climbing the mountain was the first test of the Junior Tycoon list. 36 paths paved with golden light led to the top of the 16 peaks of the mountain. Everyone was an opponent. It'd be fine if there were no obstacles or suppression along the way, but once there were obstacles, or even if someone blocked the way, it could cause a conflict. The golden path was 15 feet wide and overflowing with colorful lights. Stepping on it was like stepping on a divine rainbow. On both sides of the path were ancient and rugged mountain rocks, which were covered by an obscure and immortal forbidden power. No one dared to approach. Lin Sun chose the 9th path. It was neither too early nor too late to climb the mountain. However, this was also the time when most people climbed the mountain. The 15 feet wide golden path went straight up like a path made of golden clouds. The figures on it flickered, all of them fighting to be the first to ascend. Boom! An invisible oppressive force came from all directions, making Lin Sun's figure sink as soon as he set foot on the path. Sure enough, climbing the mountain is also very particular. Lin Sun took a deep breath and ran his chi to resist the oppressive force in an instant. However, not long after Lin Sun moved forward, a battle broke out on the path ahead. If he wanted to pass, he would inevitably be involved in it. Lin Sun frowned, but he didn't stop. An invisible force burst out from his body, and his whole body was like a sharp knife, rushing straight in. Bang, bang, bang. The experts who were fighting were also elites of the ancient orthodoxies and geniuses of the younger generation. However, when the oppressive force released by Lin Sun came over, they suddenly felt like being hit by a holy mountain and flew out in disorder. The luckier ones were thrown to one side. The more tragic ones were directly knocked out of the golden path and were directly eliminated by the rule power of the immortal mountain with unreconciled screams. Lin Sun didn't look at them and went straight ahead. It was not that he was overbearing, but the way to climb the mountain was originally a competition. Since they participated in the competition, no matter who it was, they had to bear the risk of being eliminated. Such scenes were happening frequently on the 36 golden paths at the moment. At this point, The junior tycoon list before the arrival of the Great Era began. Chapter 1061. Although Lin Sun had a great reputation, his journey up the mountain was not smooth. Boom! In just a moment, several talents, who obviously came from the same ancient orthodoxy, joined hands and launched a siege on the mountain road, which was barely 15 meters wide. There was no way to avoid the pressure of Mount Tai. Lin Sun knew at a glance that these guys were looking for trouble on purpose. Maybe they were entrusted by someone to make trouble for him on purpose, or they simply didn't want to be surpassed by him. Unfortunately, although these talents were strong, almost none of them had set foot on the extreme way. They could only be regarded as the inherited disciples, which was not enough for Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't even bother to take action. A snow-white ice dragon rushed out from under his feet, raised its head, and waved its tail, easily crushing them one by one. Their bones burst into pieces, and their flesh and blood flew everywhere. They fell into the mountains on both sides of the mountain road and disappeared. This demon god Lin is really sick. Someone nearby noticed this scene. They gasped and didn't dare to block Lin Sun anymore. They subconsciously got out of the way. Lin Sun didn't embarrass them. He passed them and continued to move forward. Demon Lin, we meet again. However, it didn't take long for someone to take out a brass seal and kill Lin Sun fiercely. It's Xing Yiqian, the leader of the young generation of the Thunderwing clan. I heard that Xing Yiqian has set foot on the extreme way. He can manipulate the secret method of thunder and lightning. His combat power is extremely strong. Behind him, the successors of the ancient orthodoxy, such as the Holy Land of Heaven's Pivot, the Heaven-Reaching Sword Sect, the Pure Land of Longevity, and the Black Sea Tengu all gloated when they saw this scene. Demon Lin had offended too many people. His way up the mountain was destined to be full of killing. Xing Yiqian's combat power was indeed extraordinary. Although he was not as good as Xiao Qinghe, he was not far behind. Unfortunately, he was suppressed by Lin Sun in the chaotic Star Beach. Not only did he almost die, but he also lost the moly arrow that he relied on. Now, although his strength had improved a lot, Lin Sun's combat power had also changed dramatically. Swish! Lin Sun used the Ice Dragon steps and disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he was in front of Xing Yiqian and pressed his palm. Damn it! Xing Yiqian's expression changed abruptly, and he suddenly circulated all of his strength. His body emitted a thunderous roar, and a pair of dragon and snake phantoms appeared, lifelike and lifelike. They were condensed from pure lightning energy, and they flowed with a sparkling, heart-palpitating, dazzling lightning. This was the secret technique passed down in their clan, Dragon Snake Lightning Strike. When executed to the limit, it was like a dragon rising from the ground, and its destructive force shook the heavens and the earth. Bang! Lin Sun's body suddenly exploded like a piece of paper. This caused Xing Yiqian to stare blankly, and then his hair stood on end. This wasn't Lin Sun at all. It was clearly just an afterimage left behind by Lin Sun. The reason for this was obviously because his opponent's movement technique was so swift that it had already surpassed his ability to react. If you want to fight, I'll wait for you at the peak. Hearing Lin Sun's indifferent and calm voice, Xing Yiqian suddenly looked up and saw that Lin Sun was already dozens of meters ahead of him. All of a sudden, Xing Yiqian's expression changed. He wasn't stupid. The short exchange had made him realize that the gap between him and Demon God Lin was growing wider. Lin Sun had long reached an unprecedented height on the path of Tao. Instantly, he felt hesitant and regretful. With Demon God Lin on this mountain path, who could stand up to him? Friend, although Demon God Lin is strong, he has many enemies. 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Furthermore, there are quite a number of people who want to deal with him. Why don't we ascend the mountain together? A successor of the Heaven's Pivot Sacred Ground spoke up. They were the first orthodoxies to rush over, and they had witnessed the scene. They were also shocked by Lin Sun's means. At this moment, it would be best if they could rope in more helpers to deal with Demon God Lin. I know what decision to make. Xing Yiqian snorted coldly. He knew the intentions of dealing with Lin Sun, but it did not mean that he would be used in such a manner. The successor of the heavens' pivot, sacred ground, did not try to persuade him further as he continued ascending the mountain. Xing Yiqian, you're already riding a tiger with nowhere to go. If you don't get rid of demon god Lin, the peak of this mountain will definitely be occupied by him. Are you willing to accept that? The successor of the heavenly sword sect also came and gave such a reminder to Xing Yiqian. Xing Yiqian was even more hesitant and conflicted. Then, the successors of the holy land of Lingbao, the Black Sea Dog tribe, the Pure Land of Longevity, the vast Sea Taoist sect, all the orthodoxies that had a grudge against Lin Sun appeared. Seeing this, Xing Yiqian finally gritted his teeth and decided to continue climbing the mountain. He was a peerless figure himself. If he could get rid of demon god Lin with the help of others, then he would have a great chance of successfully guarding the mountain in the upcoming competition. Something similar happened on the 9th mountain path. The successors of these orthodoxies tried their best to rope in other strong practitioners along the way, hoping to form an alliance to deal with Lin Sun together. In this way, they would have a greater chance of winning. From this, it could be seen that although they outnumbered Lin Sun, in their hearts, they were extremely fearful of him. They regarded him as their number one enemy, and no one dared to neglect or belittle him. Lin Sun was a loner, and it had only been a short time since he entered the ancient desolation realm. On the other hand, these ancient orthodoxies all had shocking foundations. All the geniuses that they roped in were extremely powerful. Most of them agreed to join the team to encircle Lin Sun for the sake of face or fear of the power of these orthodoxies. In this way, the alliance composed of different ancient orthodoxies became stronger and stronger like a rolling snowball. Even if only some practitioners refused to do so, they followed closely with the idea of the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, and planned to wait for the right opportunity to take action. For a time, fierce battles broke out frequently on other mountain paths, and some strong practitioners were eliminated from time to time. But the situation on the 9th mountain path was the opposite. More than half of the competition and fighting strangely disappeared, all because Lin Sun was regarded as a top threat. This kind of situation rarely happened in the past years. Because in order to ensure that the strongest successor participating in the competition was ranked on the list of junior giants, each ancient orthodoxy would send many forces to protect and defend. It was a pity that Lin Sun was a loner without any background or backing, so those ancient orthodoxies dared to form an alliance and scrupulously to deal with him. If Lin Sun was also a successor of an ancient orthodoxy, this kind of strange situation was bound to happen. The situation was very serious. Lin Sun had already seen all this. In addition to anger, there was a kind of cold, killing intent that was almost uncontrollable in his heart. So many talents of ancient orthodoxies had formed an alliance to deal with him. This kind of means could be described as shameless and despicable. These bastards really think highly of me. In this case, today, on this immortal mountain, I will accompany them to the end. Let's see who will cry first in the end. Lin Sun secretly made up his mind. The reason why he didn't kill Xing Yiqian before was that he didn't want to waste time and delay his action of climbing the mountain. There was another more important reason. That was, as long as he could climb to the top of the mountain and seize the position of mountain guard, he would have the opportunity to obtain the fate of the Great Way. At that time, every time he defeated an opponent, he would be able to seize a trace of the fate of the Great Way. The more fate of the Great Way he accumulated, the greater the advantage he would obtain in the next competition of fighting for fate. Fighting for fate was a competition of ranking. The higher the ranking, the greater the benefits. Whoosh! In the following time, Lin Sun didn't hold back anymore. He used ice dragon steps and sprinted straight to the top of the mountain at a speed visible to the naked eye. Along the way, although the pressure released by the immortal mountain was great, it couldn't slow down Lin Sun's speed at all. Along the way, although there were many strong practitioners rushing to climb higher, Lin Sun would soon catch up with them and leave them far behind. Along the way, it caused a lot of astonished gazes and uproars, but it didn't affect Lin Sun at all. At the foot of the mountain, Yin Zhanxiu casually sat on a rock and happened to witness this scene. He raised his sword-like eyebrows and said thoughtfully, "This lad has amazing potential. He is indeed extraordinary to be able to break the record set by Yun Qing by 10 years ago." After that, he revealed a ruminating expression. However, the more he acts in this manner, the greater his exhaustion will be. When he's defending the mountain, he'll have to face wave after wave of attacks. That's extremely unwise. Looks like his heart is already in chaos. Shaking his head, Yin Zhanqiu looked at the other mountain paths. Only a small group of people attracted his attention. Among them, there were Jin Miyun, Ye Chun, laughing at the heavens, Yu Lingkong, Ji Xingyao, and so on. Of course, there was only one person he paid attention to the most, Zhao Jingxian. In less than 15 minutes, Lin Sun rushed to the top of the 9th mountain path. This was also the end of the 9th mountain peak. A huge Taoist altar stood on it. The Taoist altar was simple and unadorned, filled with a sacred and ethereal aura. It was shaped like a blooming lotus, half of which was black and the other half was white, just like the separation of clear and turbid and the coexistence of yin and yang. If he wanted to guard the mountain, he must guard this Taoist altar. From climbing the mountain to guarding the mountain, the success or failure could be determined after 30 minutes. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun appeared on the Taoist altar. At the same time, the black and white yin and yang on the surface of the Taoist altar seemed to wake up from silence, emitting a magical fluctuation of luck. Luck was originally illusory, but at this time it was like a breeze enshrouding the Taoist altar. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. This immortal mountain was really mysterious and unpredictable. It deserved to be one of the 5 most famous forbidden areas since ancient times. Boom! Before long, a dragon-shaped stone tablet appeared in the center of the Taoist altar. It was 9 meters high, with the dragon's head facing the sky and the dragon's body entrenched. Its eyes, dragon whiskers, dragon claws, dragon scales were all visible, emitting an ancient and majestic aura, which made people feel awe. It was just that the stone tablet was dull and lifeless, lacking in indescribable power. This was the coiling dragon tablet, the luck and power of Tao that the talents who participated in the competition could obtain in the process of guarding the mountain would all appear on it. P.S. Please bear with it for a few more days. It's the end of this month. The goldfish is warming up in advance. It will explode from the first day of next month. Please prepare your monthly tickets. The more monthly tickets you have, the more it will explode. You won't be disappointed. Please use the search engine to search for keywords. UU Novel. Chapter 1062. The Coiling Dragon Tablet. It represented the amount of luck of the great way a talent could obtain. It was difficult to climb a mountain, and even more difficult to guard it. Standing on the altar meant that one might be challenged by other talents at any time. Moreover, this kind of challenge was not limited to one time. The battle would not stop until the end of 30 minutes. Lin Sun's gaze carefully stared at the coiling dragon tablet for a long time. The killing intent, fighting spirit, rage, lofty sentiments that had accumulated in his heart mixed together, causing the battle intent in his heart to soar and boil. This was just the ranking of junior giants. Since he came here, there was only one goal, the first place. Because the first place of the ranking of junior giants could not only obtain more luck of the Great Way, but also an extra reward of entering the Immortal Secret Realm. The magical function of the Immortal Secret Realm was very simple. It reversed the time rule. 1 year in the Immortal Secret Realm was only 1 day in the outside world. Even the sages who had stepped into the divine path could only look up to such a method, but they couldn't do it, because the law of time was the highest law in the world. It was too high and incredible. Even the sages could only sigh with emotion. Time is like this, and nothing can be changed. For Lin Sun, time was undoubtedly the most urgent thing he needed, because he already knew that the gap between him and Yun Qingbai was the precipitation of time. I'm going to be the first, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. His eyebrows were calm, and his head was full of determination. Then, He looked down at the mountain road below. From a distance, he could see that many figures were approaching the top of the mountain like a long snake. There were so many people that the golden road of 15 meters wide was filled with them. They had a surprising tacit understanding. There was no competition or killing, because they had all formed an alliance, and their primary target was Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood silently with his hands behind his back. His moon-white clothes were fluttering in the wind. Clouds and mist surrounded him, making his figure seem otherworldly and otherworldly. His black eyes were deep and cold, full of indifference. Demon Lin, I'll give you a chance. Jump down from this mountain, and we won't embarrass you anymore. You don't have to suffer physical pain. The people of Heaven's pivot holy land came up and looked at Lin Sun, who stood alone on the platform. Their faces were full of ridicule and awe. Didn't Xue Qianhen and Zhang Jing learn their lesson when they were crippled? Lin Sun said indifferently. His words caused the other party's expression to instantly turn gloomy and extremely livid. Jump? Wouldn't that be letting him off too easily? Even though I can't kill him completely on the undying Sacred Mountain, I still want to kill him one slash at a time. In just a moment, the successor of the Heavenly Sword Sect had also arrived. The one who had spoken was Ant Shooting Sword Kong Ling. She was a descendant of the Peacock bloodline. She wore a fiery red dress, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Back then, Yin Xingbai's Nightflower Sword had been snatched from her hands by Lin Sun. This made her furious and ashamed. A loser dares to clamor. I'll pluck off all your feathers later. Lin Sun sneered with an indulgent look, as if no one else was present. You're courting death. Kong Ling's eyes were spitting fire. Demon God Lin, you've seen the current situation. If you don't want to lose too badly, get down from the platform. Get down. At this time, the holy land of Lingbao, the pure land of longevity, the Taoist sect of Vast Sea, the Black Sea Dog tribe, and other talents arrived one after another. They gathered there densely, pointing at Lin Sun and clamoring. Their expressions were either filled with hatred or killing intent. Do you think you have nothing to fear just because you have more people? You're all the so-called successors of the ancient orthodoxies. What a disgrace. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his voice resounded through the clouds like a big bell. I'm not in a mood to talk nonsense with you. If you're not convinced, just come up. His figure was peerless, overlooking the crowd. His words were calm, but there was a sense of disdain for the world. His voice rumbled up and down the ninth peak, stirring up the wind and clouds. At the foot of the mountain, the strong practitioners of the Wind Whisperer tribe, who had been paying attention to the battle for a long time, had their eyes lit up. They took out the golden message tree leaf they had prepared and recorded the scene without missing a single detail. At the top of the mountain, the crowd was furious and their faces were gloomy. They had thought that Demon God Lin would at least be a little afraid of him. Who would have thought that Lin Sun was still so unscrupulous and bold? Ho ho, you're really a reckless madman. How dare you say such big words by yourself? A person sneered disdainfully. Boom! On the Taoist platform, Lin Sun pressed his palm and a palm print appeared in the void, pressing down across the air. The crowd only felt a blur in front of their eyes. The palm print was like a monstrous sun, dazzling to the extreme, and its speed was unparalleled. Ah, that person screamed. He also took out his treasures to block and tried his best to avoid it, but it was useless. This was a talent with the strength of the fulfillment of the reincarnation developing realm, and he was also a successor disciple of an ancient orthodoxy. But at this time, he was killed by the palm print like a piece of grass. Puff! His body exploded, and a rain of blood splattered. Lin Sun's attack was absolutely overbearing and unparalleled. In the blink of an eye, he killed a genius of an ancient orthodoxy. This bloody scene immediately shocked everyone. At this time, Lin Sun still stood on the Taoist platform, his clothes fluttering, his black eyes cold, and his breath pure and ethereal, as if he had never made a move. Everyone's expression changed. Some were angry, and some were afraid. Everyone, let's kill this bastard together. Seeing that Lin Sun had taken the lead and affected everyone's morale, a successor of the Heaven's pivot holy land stood out without hesitation. It was a barefooted young man in hemp garments. Before he could finish speaking, before his voice died away, he leaped into the air and took out a jade ruler. It was like a blue lightning, illuminating eternity. This jade ruler was fierce and fierce. It was obviously a terrifying supreme weapon of kingcraft, and its power was not limited by the rules and order of the immortal mountain. Clang! Kong Ling of the sky-reaching sword sect also attacked. He took out the Gusha sword, and a dazzling sword chi of hundreds of meters long gushed out. Whether it was the young man in linen or Kong Ling, they were all influential figures who had set foot on the top of the world. At this moment, their attacks seemed incomparably powerful. Seeing this, the other powerhouses who were hesitant also attacked from all directions towards Lin Sun in the center of the Taoist platform. This was not an arena battle, and there was no fairness to speak of. Standing on the Taoist platform, one was bound to be besieged and attacked by groups. Clang! Lin Sun's body was surrounded by endless green divine light, which surged up and down like a vast ocean, illuminated the void, and blocked the jade ruler. At the same time, a Swanee seal was condensed, and it emitted the divine power to suppress the universe. It met the bright sword chi head-on. Kill! The battle was completely ignited at this moment, and the curtains were drawn. A group of geniuses from different ancient orthodoxies rushed to the Taoist platform with shocking momentum and boundless terror. But Lin Sun did not retreat half a step. Instead, he took the initiative to fight with them. Since entering the immortal Forbidden Land, he had been targeted everywhere along the way, and it seemed that they wanted to kill him. Until he ascended the mountain, the dignified successors of ancient orthodoxies shamelessly joined forces to deal with him. How could Lin Sun bear it? A group of clowns had repeatedly offended him. If he didn't completely suppress their arrogance, how could he pursue the Tao in the future? As Zhao Jingxian had guessed before, Lin Sun had already made up his mind to kill this time. If he didn't do so, he wouldn't be able to vent his inner anger. Kill! Lin Sun's cold eyes flashed, and his figure shone dazzlingly, like a green sun moving horizontally, illuminating the mountains and rivers. Boom! The Upanishad of 9 strikes for shaking heaven ran wantonly, and a series of punches burst out, like the fists of gods and demons, which could break the sky. With a bang, Kong Ling's Gusha sword was shaken away, and her delicate body trembled and almost fell out of the Taoist platform. On the other side, the jade ruler of the young man in linen was stepped on by Lin Sun. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Puff! Puff! At this time, with the burst of Lin Sun's terrible fist power that was enough to shake the heaven and earth, the talents who were close to him had no time to dodge. Their bodies exploded like fireworks, and blood rain poured down and dyed the void red. At the foot of the mountain, there was a commotion and uproar. With the opening of the ranking of junior giants, the geniuses who were qualified to participate in the competition had already taken action, leaving only some legendary figures, squires, and old servants at the foot of the mountain. When they noticed this scene, they couldn't help but be surprised, and their expressions changed suddenly. The successors of those ancient orthodoxies were all the top figures among their peers, like the blazing sun. Now they gathered together and aimed at Lin Sun. How terrible their power was! But the result was that Lin Sun blocked them calmly and started a massacre. He was as powerful as a demon, and he dominated the Taoist platform. Go to hell! Lin Sun's palm and fingers expanded, and a burning galaxy spread out in the void, burning the sky and destroying the earth, violent and amazing. The peerless Taoist method, fire refining galaxy, under the control of the power of fire at the level of Taoist truth. As soon as this Taoist method was displayed, it seemed that there were burning stars exploding on the Taoist platform. The terrible power of destruction swallowed more than a dozen geniuses on the spot, making them scream miserably. Bastard, how dare you! The young man in linen was furious, and his jade ruler shone brilliantly, splashing thousands of lightning arcs and shrouding Lin Sun. Get lost! Lin Sun, who was fighting freely, didn't even look back. A phantom of a divine beast emerged from his back, and then it soared into the air. In an instant, the young man in linen and the jade ruler in his hand were knocked away, and the sound of bones breaking came from his body, which made him spew blood from his mouth and nose and almost die. Boom! At this time, Lin Sun's fist strength was like a dragon, whistling through the universe, and met the successor of the pure land of longevity. His fist intent was invincible, majestic, and boundless, and shook the enemies in all directions. At the foot of the mountain, the legendary figures and servants of various orthodoxies were all trembling. For most of them, it was the first time for them to see Lin Sun fight. They thought that a peerless figure, no matter how strong he was doomed to be killed when he was besieged. But who would have thought that Demon Lin was far stronger and more terrible than the rumors said? Chapter 1063. Boom! The Jade Ruler was sent flying again, wailing incessantly. Lin Sun was like a demon. As he raised his hand, his fist force broke the void and blasted out a powerful punch. Ah! The youth in linen screamed. This top core disciple of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land was defeated by Lin Sun after several exchanges. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death, coughing up blood. But his expression was still resolute, and he roared resentfully, "Demon Lin, on this immortal mountain, we are immortal. No matter how strong you are, you will eventually be exhausted." Boom! Lin Sun's fist force swept across and cracked his body. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun punched again. The void shattered and the youth in linen exploded, disappearing from where he was. "You outnumber me and threaten me with death. Trash like this deserves to be called a top talent?" Lin Sun's expression was cold, his black eyes merciless. He turned around and stared at Kong Ling. "Quick, let's attack together and kill this demon." Kong Ling screamed. Lin Sun's strength chilled her heart and impacted her fighting spirit. The youth in linen was the first top talent to be eliminated since the start of the battle. This was nothing. What was frightening was that he was no match for Lin Sun, who was also a top talent. The hearts of the geniuses from the other orthodoxies were also impacted. It had only been a short while since the start of the battle, but more than 20 geniuses had already been killed. Although they wouldn't really die, such losses were still shocking. From the moment we set foot on this mountain, we have no way out. If we don't kill this demon, do we have to let him kill us one by one? A descendant of the Lingbao Holy Land roared. There is a limit to one's strength. No matter how strong Demon Lin is, he is only at the reincarnation developing realm. Kill. We won't die. Even if we are eliminated, it will be worth it if we can drag this bastard down with us. The fighting spirit of the heroes was ignited once again. It was not that they were not afraid of death, but there was no possibility of death on this immortal mountain. Whoosh, 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 figures rushed up one after another, bursting with killing intent and terrifying aura. They were surrounded by dazzling Taoist light. All sorts of Tao arts and secret arts were like a torrential downpour that covered the heavens and the earth, and it covered the Tao platform. The treasures, overflowing with colorful brilliance, deduced different wonderful appearances and powers, shrouded Lin Sun alone. Such a shocking scene was sufficient to cause any half-step King Realm expert to feel despair. At this moment, the Wind Whisperer powerhouses who were recording this scene with the leaves of the Golden Message Tree were so shocked that their scalps went numb. Such a horrifying incident had never occurred in the battles for the position of minor titans in the past. If this spread to the outside world, the entire East Victorious domain, no, the entire ancient Desolation region would be in an uproar. But at the same time, Demon God Lin's divine might of holding the pass alone left the Wind Whisperer experts dazzled. Their blood boiled as a result. He fought against the geniuses of the various sects all by himself. Such boldness could shake the heavens and earth and shock the world. Rumble, as the battle became more and more intense, Lin Sun's figure became more and more dazzling, ethereal like a dream. His spirit, chi, and spirit were completely burning and boiling like a big furnace, and the strong foundation of Taoism in his body was fully operated. At this moment, every skin of his was flowing with Taoist light, and every strand of his hair was crystal clear, shining with a frightening luster. As he raised his hands and feet, the power of the Great Way roared and caused the void to resonate. The power released by each blow showed the unparalleled power of destruction. Clang! The cold light of Gu's shooting sword flashed, and it was extremely fierce. Puff! At the same time, Lin Sun's palm and fingers swept across, like a heavenly saber breaking the sky, bright and sharp. Kong Ling screamed, but it was too late to dodge. Her throat was cut, and scarlet blood sprayed out. Her headless body turned into a peacock with gorgeous wings, but Lin Sun burned her wings into ashes with the Star River refining method, and her body was scorched black. A phoenix without feathers was not as good as a chicken, and a peacock with burnt feathers was even worse. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, Kong Ling's body disappeared into thin air. Otherwise, Lin Sun would have the impulse to taste the peacock's meat. On the Taoist altar, blood was raining, and screams were heard one after another. Lin Sun's figure moved, and his whole body shone. His fists were powerful and heavy. Many talents of the ancient orthodoxies exploded one by one, and all of them were killed. Here, the divine light roared. The wind and thunder surged, and the blood chi was like an ocean. Lin Sun rushed up alone. Although he was surrounded by enemies from all directions, he had the courage to fight against 10,000 enemies. On the Taoist altar, blood splashed and gathered into a pool, scarlet and dazzling. Then, the fluctuation of the rules of order emerged, and the blood and corpses all disappeared. Only on the ancient dragon steel, there were wisps of illusory luster, like tiny wriggling earthworms constantly gathering. Vaguely, the gray scales on the dragon-shaped body on the steel were glowing with a faint luster, and there was an extra trace of spirituality. This was the power of the Great Way. Every time he defeated an opponent on the Taoist altar, he could obtain a wisp of the Great Way from the immortal mountain and gather it on the dragon steel. Now, as Lin Sun killed more and more opponents, the power of the Great Way gathered on the dragon steel gradually increased. At the same time, conflicts also broke out on the top of the other 35 peaks. Relatively speaking, it was extremely chaotic. No one was deliberately targeted, but everyone who guarded the Taoist altar had to bear the risk of being challenged constantly. Of course, the competition on other peaks was far less fierce than that on the Taoist altar where Lin Sun was. Boom! The divine light collided, and the magic weapons flew everywhere. The killing was still going on. It was not that Lin Sun didn't feel the pressure, but the pressure of being surrounded by enemies from all directions was far more than he could bear. The most important point was that, although he had met some peerless figures up to this point, they were not as powerful as Shao Qinghe in terms of combat power. You trash! Do you only dare to hide behind and wait to take advantage of me? Suddenly, Lin Sun said coldly. He noticed that some peerless figures with extremely powerful auras gathered in the distance and didn't rush forward. Obviously, they intended to use others to wear down Lin Sun's strength. When Lin Sun's strength was exhausted, these guys would attack without hesitation. As soon as Lin Sun's words came out, the faces of those geniuses who were attacking turned gloomy and extremely annoyed. Anyone who was used as cannon fodder would not feel happy. How dare you? Don't try to mislead us. A successor of the pure land of longevity with a feather crown on his head rushed out. In an instant, he rushed to the Taoist altar, waved a big halberd, and chopped down. This was an extremely outstanding young man who had set foot on the peak with extraordinary divine power. As soon as he attacked, he showed his arrogant and domineering spirit. But just a moment later, he was punched in the chest by Lin Sun, and his body burst like a piece of paper. The bloody scene shocked everyone in the field and made their souls tremble. Since when could peerless figures be killed so easily? At the foot of the mountain, the famous figures and squires of various orthodoxies were also shocked. Even among the peerless talents, Demon God Lin could be regarded as the top. His combat power was too strong. Lin Sun glanced at the crowd and said in a cold voice, "Today, I'm here. No matter which ancient orthodoxy you come from, no matter who you are, if you dare to take a step forward, I will kill you without mercy." At this time, the sky above the Taoist altar was empty. The geniuses who rushed up earlier had all been killed, and only Lin Sun stood on it. Under his feet, there was a pool of blood that hadn't faded away. The void around him was filled with a strong and choking smell of blood. But he was spotless, and his figure was out of this world. He was like a demon god, overlooking all directions. His power made many people tremble. One person, like a mountain, stood proudly on the Taoist altar, stopping the successors of the major orthodoxies and suppressing all enemies here. This was too crazy. Similarly, this was something that no one could have predicted before. Who could believe that a person with the same cultivation of reincarnation developing realm could defeat the geniuses of the ancient orthodoxies? Those geniuses were all outstanding talents of the younger generation in the outside world. They were famous and were the center of attention. But in front of demon god Lin, they seemed so vulnerable that no one could bear to watch. All of this proved that demon god Lin's combat strength had already arrived at an unprecedented state on the path towards the absolute Tao. Not to mention ordinary geniuses, even existences that were similarly at the apex of the world didn't have the qualifications to compete with demon god Lin. Fortunately, this was on the Immortal Mountain, and there were rules and regulations, so there wouldn't be any real deaths. Otherwise, the orthodoxies would be doomed to suffer such heavy losses. Moreover, it was precisely because they knew that they wouldn't die completely that these geniuses dared to attack without fear of death. At this time, Yin Zhanxiu couldn't ignore this battle. Lin's performance surprised him, and a strange look surged in his eyes. The first spurt of energy, the second decline, and the third exhaustion. I'm afraid this lad has consumed a lot of energy in this battle. I don't know how long he can last. Yin Zhanxiu muttered to himself, and then he shook his head. There was nothing to pay attention to. Every top figure who could be ranked on the minor giants list could do this. If Lin Sun hadn't been targeted like this, with the combat strength he had displayed, it wouldn't be a problem for him to be ranked on the minor giants list. Unfortunately, his situation wasn't optimistic. As if confirming Yin Zhanxiu's guess, someone on the mountain peak couldn't help but speak coldly. Demon God Lin, although your combat strength is outstanding, who gave you the guts to look down on us ancient orthodoxies that have existed for a long time? It wasn't just one person who spoke, but a group of people. They were all top figures, and their eyes were cold. According to their judgment, Lin Sun should have consumed a lot of energy in the battle, and it was destined that he wouldn't be able to last for long. Therefore, they were ready to attack. Unfortunately, no one knew how strong Lin Sun's foundation was. In terms of cultivation, no one could compare to him. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why don't you come up and die? Lin Sun's cold eyes were even more frightening. Demon God Lin, you're too arrogant. Do you really think you're invincible? A woman sneered. Although she was shocked, she couldn't help but feel angry. Because as the descendants of ancient orthodoxies, they had always been high and mighty, and they had an innate sense of superiority when facing people like Lin Sun who had no one to rely on. But now, they were repeatedly defeated by Lin Sun. This was a great humiliation, and it was difficult for them to not be angry. Pooh! However, as soon as the woman finished speaking, a sharp light that was as white as snow swept out from Lin Sun, and the woman's head was chopped off. Chapter 1064. Clang! The broken sword returned to Lin Sun's hand with an illusory, snow-white luster. In the distance, the woman died on the spot. Up until the moment of her death, her cold laughter still reverberated through the surroundings, and it had become a great irony. The crowd was furious. They would not sit still and wait for death, so they attacked. The battle became more and more fierce. This time was different from before. Many top figures had been mobilized, and there was no lack of extremely troublesome and powerful experts. For example, a burly man from the Taoism sect of Tsangmei wielded a pair of bronze whips, smashing the void into pieces. A yellow-robed woman from the Pure Land of Longevity was also very eye-catching. She activated a golden lamp, which shone brightly and produced an extremely terrible purification power. On the other side, a black-robed man from the Black Sea Dog tribe held a blood-colored awl in his hand. With a gentle sweep, the blood light surged and crushed the void. In addition, there were also top figures such as the Holy Land of Lingbao and the Heaven-Reaching Sword Sect. They were all outstanding with outstanding combat power. The small Taoist altar was full of sabers and swords. The collision of treasures and Taoist magic was like thunder in the ninth heaven, shaking the mountaintop. At this time, Lin Sun finally felt a heavy pressure. But this did not make him afraid. Instead, it stimulated the surging fighting intent in the depths of his heart, and his momentum also rose. Although the opponents became stronger, Lin Sun's fighting method changed accordingly. He attacked with the broken sword and fought with the 6 cuts of heavenly yuan. Clang, clang, clang. The clear sound of the broken sword surged through the sky like a tide, like a cry thirsting for blood. It was as white as snow, light and illusory. It was an unfathomable magic weapon and was not restricted by the rules of the Immortal Mountain. Obscure and mysterious Tao marking diagrams seethed and flickered on the edge of the blade, and it increased its peerlessly fierce might. And Lin Sun's breath had become extremely fierce. Originally, with his own combat power, even without using the broken sword, he was strong enough to fight against the opponent. But Lin Sun did not want to be delayed. For him, only by killing more opponents in the shortest time could he completely vent his anger and fire. Boom! The robust man held the bronze whips in his hand as he smashed them down. With this strike, wind and lightning surged while the tune of the Tao rumbled, and it emanated might capable of obliterating the heavens and the earth. At this moment, a cold light flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. Star-plucking slash. It was like an eternal night had descended, and 10,000 stars fell. When the saber struck, it illuminated the eternal night and swept up the 10,000 stars. Ka-cha, ka-cha! The pair of bronze whips were broken. This pair of treasures was an imperial Tao extreme weapon with an ancient history. They were the ancient treasures of the vast Sea Tao sect. But now it was cut in half by the broken blade. The tall and sturdy male was furious. His heart was bleeding, and the pain he felt was indescribable. On this immortal divine mountain, there was indeed no such thing as true death. However, if the treasure was destroyed, there was no way for it to recover to its original state. After all, the Imperial Path Ultimate Weapon was not a living thing, so there was no such thing as life and death. Seeing Lin Sun coming, the burly man could only endure and dodge, even though he hated Lin Sun so much. Boom! An expanse of bright multicolored light enveloped over, dispersing the darkness. It was filled with a holy and purifying power, brilliant like divine light, illuminating everything. It was the yellow-robed woman from the pure land of longevity. Lin Sun attacked with the broken blade, while he continued to rush towards the burly man. The burly man's face changed greatly. He exerted all his strength to fight against Lin Sun, but he was punched out of the Taoist altar by Lin Sun. He fell to the ground with a thud, and blood spurted from his mouth. Falling from the Taoist altar meant failure. The burly man couldn't accept it for a while. He couldn't help roaring angrily and rush to the Taoist altar again. But when he was halfway there, he was shrouded by the invisible power of order and disappeared in an instant. Obviously, he'd been completely eliminated from the competition. At this time, the duel on the Taoist altar was still going on, and it was unprecedentedly fierce. If such a fight happened in the outside world, it was bound to cause unpredictable disasters and make the world panic and uproar. Similarly, a duel like this was bound to attract the attention of countless practitioners and cause a sensation. After all, a duel between the top was rare, and a duel like Lin Sun, who fought against a group of top figures by himself, was even rarer. Whoosh! Before long, the yellow-robed woman from the pure land of longevity screamed. One of her snow-white arms was cut off by the broken blade. Her pretty face turned pale with pain, and she almost lost control of the golden lamp. The crowd was frightened, and their pupils dilated. Up to this point, Devil Lin didn't show any sign of weakness. On the contrary, he became braver and more powerful. Some practitioners' morale was shaken, and they hesitated. Even if they knew they wouldn't really die, they felt desperate and depressed when they thought that there was little hope even if they fought desperately. Bang! Soon, the yellow-robed woman couldn't hold on any longer and was suppressed by Lin's son. The broken blade swept across and cut off her slim waist, causing her blood to flow like a waterfall. At the foot of the mountain, the famous figures and attendants of the ancient orthodoxies all clenched their fists. Their breath was terrible, and their faces were livid. Those who were eliminated were the successors of their orthodoxies, which made them feel extremely aggrieved and annoyed. Some of the elders were so angry that their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Invisible killing intent filled their bodies. The successors of their sects were also top figures, but they were defeated in such a way, which was very difficult for them to accept. Of course, most of the spectators were excited, and there was a hubbub of excitement. Since it had nothing to do with them, they were naturally happy to watch the show. This was something that hadn't happened for many years. A young man without any foundation had defeated the successors of those ancient orthodoxies. It made people feel emotional. I've underestimated his ability, Yin Zhanxiu frowned. Lin Sun's performance had exceeded his expectations once again, and he was surprised. However, he's still not mature enough. The path of cultivation isn't so simple. Yin Zhanxiu was ranked third among the top 10 giants of Dongxing world, and he had been immersed in the path of cultivation for many years. Even though Lin Sun's performance had surprised him time and time again, it wasn't really shocking, and it wasn't even enough to make him feel fearful. If the Peerless Tao path was divided into 3 levels, first glimpse, advanced, and peak, then Yin Zhanxiu judged that Lin Sun's combat prowess should be at the advanced level, but he was still far from the peak level. Moreover, the ancient orthodoxies of the ancient desolation acknowledged that the top geniuses at the beginner level already possessed the qualifications to charge into the minor giants rankings. The top geniuses that possessed the attainment of the ascendant level would definitely be able to ascend into the minor giants rankings if nothing unexpected happened. As for the top geniuses at the peak level, every single one of them could be said to be giants amongst their peers, and they possessed the potential to be ranked among the top 10 giants. If you were a figure at the peak level, then perhaps I would look at you differently. Unfortunately, when Yin Zhanxiu thought up to here, he couldn't help but shake his head. There was nothing to feel sorry about. At the same time, the situation of the battles on the other peaks was becoming clearer and clearer. As soon as the top geniuses like Laughing in the Heavens, Chun, Jin Miyun, Li Qingping, Yuling Kong, and Ji Xingyao ascended the Taoist altar, they had already confirmed their overlord status. Moreover, although there were many experts who dared to challenge them, no one dared to gang up on them. This was the advantage of being the inheritors of the ancient orthodoxies. If anyone dared to treat them unfairly, then, sorry to say, they would be punished later. In this way, although the threat they suffered while guarding the mountain was always there compared to Lin Sun, one was in the sky and the other was on the ground. However, there were also exceptions. For example, although Alu wasn't ganged up on, the treatment he received was similar to that of Lin Sun, because no one knew who this barbarian-like guy was. When dealing with him, they naturally couldn't be as fearful as dealing with the inheritors of the ancient orthodoxies. What was strange was that since Alu ascended the Taoist altar, he frequently provoked others, giving full play to his natural talent of shooting his mouth off. Trash. Too trash. Is this the so-called top geniuses? Even a pig in my village is stronger than you. Bah. I finally understand that the so-called top geniuses in the world are all fools who deceive the world. None of them can fight. Don't accept it? If you don't accept it, then fight. Whoever is a coward is a coward. Just by listening to these arrogant words, one could know how ugly the faces of those who were provoked by Alu would be. However, it had to be admitted that Alu was really abnormal. His majestic body was like an unshakable mountain, and all the experts who fought with him could only be beaten passively. Such an eye-catching performance naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Zhao Jingxian and Xiao Qinghe also ascended the Taoist altar and fought fiercely with their opponents. Their performance was not eye-catching, but it was hard to predict the outcome. Fortunately, at least up to now, the two had not been eliminated. At this time, more than half of the time had passed, and the situation on each mountain was getting more and more tragic. In order to be ranked on the list of junior giants, no matter who it was, they were doing their best to fight and kill, lest they would be eliminated. Only the 9th mountain, where Lin Sun was the most special exception. Most of the top geniuses who ascended this mountain aimed to defeat Lin Sun. Moreover, from the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun dominated the Taoist altar, so that no matter what intention they had to defeat Lin Sun first in order to achieve their wish. Clang! The snow-white broken blade collided with the blood-red awl, making a deafening roar. Then, the blood-red awl in the hand of the black-robed man of the Black Tengu clan exploded with a loud bang and turned into a rain of light. At the same time, Lin Sun had already moved. He took a step forward and punched 3 times in an instant. Each punch was faster and faster than the previous one, like overlapping thunder and raging waves. Bang! The first punch made the black-robed man feel as if he was struck by lightning. His body sank, his right shoulder collapsed, and his tendons and bones were broken. Plop! The second punch made the black-robed man kneel on the ground with blood oozing from his 7 orifices. He let out a heart-wrenching scream, and his spine was broken. Puff! The third punch smashed his head, and the headless body turned into the original shape of a black dog, lying on the ground dripping with blood. The 3 punches were completed in one breath and landed in an instant, as fast as lightning. The expert from the Black Tengu clan was killed on the spot by Lin Sun in a domineering manner. Chapter 1065. One day he would slaughter all the black demonic dogs in the world. Lin Sun would never forget what he had said in the West Hung Boundary. Lin Sun really hated this clan to the extreme. It was not only harmful to the world, but also guilty of many sins. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were utterly heartless. Therefore, when Lin Sun killed the black-robed man, his means were particularly domineering and bloody. A commotion broke out in the surroundings. Many geniuses revealed looks of shock, shaken by this scene. It's really abnormal. Even a top figure can't be so strong, can he? Someone said in a trembling voice. Up to this point, at least dozens of geniuses have been killed by Lin Sun, and 7 or 8 of the top figures have been killed by Lin Sun. But Lin Sun was not even injured from beginning to end. On the Taoist altar, Lin Sun did not intend to stop and continued to attack his opponents. "How dare you?" a young man in a splendid robe screamed. Noticing that Lin Sun was rushing over, he trembled with fear. "Idiot!" Lin Sun looked cold. His clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were as deep and frightening as the abyss. Boom! When he opened his mouth, he had already pressed his palm. The young man in a splendid robe retreated and flashed away. At the same time, he shouted angrily, "You are inviting disaster for yourself. Even if you can be invincible here, you will be killed in the outside world." As soon as his voice fell, his neck was suddenly cut by a broken blade, and a bloody head was thrown into the air. Damn it! The others' faces were livid, and their eyes were full of anger and hatred. They should have encircled Lin Sun, but they never thought that they would be killed one after another by Lin Sun. No one had expected this, and the blow was too heavy. Demon Lin, do you know what you are doing? You don't bow your head obediently, but act violently. This will only make your death more embarrassing when you return to the outside world. They made threats. Don't you descendants of the orthodoxy feel ashamed? You can't defeat me even if you attack me together. Now you're defeated by me. Not only do you not know how to respect me, but you also dare to threaten me. Do you deserve to be called talents? Lin Sun blocked the Taoist altar alone, like a demon dominator, oppressing people to the point of suffocation. Regardless of whether it was the experts not too far away from the Tao platform or the renowned figures in attendance at the foot of the mountain, All of their expressions were extremely unsightly. Being reprimanded like this by a young man that didn't belong to any sect or sect was something they'd never experienced before, and they felt extremely furious and aggrieved in their hearts. With me, Lin Sun, here today, all of you little rats can dream of occupying this place. Lin Sun's words were cold and overbearing, and he revealed the elegant demeanor of a devil god. Boasting shamelessly kill, someone roared and charged forward with the others. They had no way out. Even if Lin Sun was strong enough to make them frightened and uneasy, they had no choice but to fight desperately. In any case, he wouldn't truly die. If they could exhaust Lin Sun's physical strength and kill him, it would be a victory. Unfortunately, these geniuses were doomed to be no match for Lin Sun. Their blood flowed like a river, and their heads rolled on the ground. There were more than 100 experts in this group, and they were already the last force to ascend this mountain peak. Their scale could also be said to be the largest, and they had the advantage in numbers. But the result didn't change. Under the slaughter of Lin Sun's broken sword, blood splashed and screams rang out from time to time. On the coiling dragon tablet, wisps of great way luck like tiny earthworms were gathering and increasing rapidly. The fine dragon scales were shining with the unique luster of great way luck. Later, the area where the dragon tail was entrenched suddenly lit up, showing a golden and holy luster, full of spirituality like an illusion. This was an extremely amazing phenomenon produced when the great way luck gathered and accumulated to a certain extent. It's a miracle. He actually managed to light up the dragon tail while guarding the mountain. This has never happened before in the past. At the foot of the mountain, an elder of an ancient sect was shocked and moved. Nearby, there was also an uproar. Many people were dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. The coiling dragon tablet was shaped like a lying dragon, and it was divided into 7 areas: dragon tail, dragon claws, dragon body, dragon head, dragon whiskers, dragon horns, and dragon eyes. When he obtained great way luck gathered to a certain extent, one part of the coiling dragon could produce a divine glow. In the ranking battle for providence, it would decide the ranking. The more the luck, the more parts of the coiling dragon would produce the divine glow, and the higher its ranking would be, and vice versa. In the past years, there had never been a person like Lin Sun who could make a part of the coiling dragon tablet produce the divine glow just by guarding the mountain. This could be said to be the first in history, and it was unparalleled in both ancient and modern times. This isn't surprising at all. Any expert that possesses the attainments of reaching the next level in a hopeless situation would similarly be able to accomplish this if they were placed in the same situation. Some people were very calm. It can only be said that Demon God Lin has the opportunity to create this miracle because the situation is too special. Yin Zhanxiu nodded secretly. This was true. In his opinion, the luck Lin Sun had obtained could indeed rank first among the 36 mountains. But it was just guarding the mountain after all. When the battle for luck broke out, the more luck Lin Sun had, the more he would lose, and the more luck he would lose. In the end, it was very likely that others would benefit from it. Thinking of this, Yin Zhanxiu was stunned. He suddenly realized that all the assumptions and conjectures he had made had unconsciously confirmed that Lin Sun could successfully guard the mountain. This made him frown. This was another accident. You don't come over. On the platform of the 9th mountain, at the end of the battle, a powerhouse was so frightened that his fighting spirit collapsed. Before Lin Sun could approach, he screamed. Swoosh! The other strong man turned around and ran away, jumping off the Taoist altar in a panic. He was really frightened by Lin Sun's overwhelming power of the demon god. This was shocking and also made people's hearts tremble. As for the rest, after seeing this scene, they completely broke down and began to flee regardless of anything. Even if they knew that they could not really die, they did not want to face Demon God Lin again. Lin Sun was like a divine mountain lying on the platform. It was impossible for him to shake him. Shame! What a disgrace! At the foot of the mountain, a senior figure roared in anger and stamped his feet. No one could accept this. As the successor of an ancient orthodoxy, He was famous, prestigious, and had a high status. But now his fighting spirit collapsed, and he fled in a panic, even abandoning his face and dignity. If this was spread out, it would definitely be a stain on these ancient orthodoxies, and they would become a joke. On the platform, only Lin Sun was left. He stood there alone, looking down at the heroes in the distance with a cold expression. "Is that all you've got?" he asked. The surrounding area could not calm down. All the talents of the sect were livid, their chests heaving up and down, their hearts filled with shame and grievance. But when they met Lin Sun's indifferent and deep eyes, none of them dared to step forward and fight him. They were really frightened. "Although you are strong, do you think you can leave this place alive?" Someone gritted his teeth and said. Puff! Lin Sun struck with his broken sword. Blood splashed, and a man's body was cut into two halves. Blood poured out like a waterfall. "It's nothing more than intimidation and threats. I've killed so many idiots like you since I entered the ancient desolation realm. Why do I care about these *T threats?" Lin Sun's face was full of disdain, and his words were plain, showing his invincible confidence. The faces of the people in the field turned pale. Clang! Lin Sun stood on the Taoist altar and killed those geniuses from different sects with his broken sword. Since he had offended them completely, there was no reason for him to show mercy. Although he could not kill them completely, he just wanted to kill them to his heart's content. Blood splashed. Several people were killed on the spot because they were caught off guard. Run! The rest of the people were in a complete panic. They scattered and rushed down the mountain road in panic like stray dogs. Some people directly rushed to the mountains on both sides of the Golden Path, but were instantly eliminated by the rules of the Immortal Mountain. This made the elders of the ancient orthodoxy at the foot of the mountain livid. Today's defeat was not only unyielding, but also a disgrace that could not be washed away. In fact, they also saw that Lin Sun had already established the general trend and was difficult to be defeated. But it was too shameful for their successors to scatter and flee like this. If possible, Lin Sun would like to catch all these guys in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, he had to guard the mountain and could not leave the platform. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun stopped thinking about it. He looked sideways at the coiling dragon tablet, not far away, and calculated the time. Then he sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. The battle didn't last long from the beginning to the end, but it was absolutely tragic. Of course, this was only for Lin Sun's opponents. Some people had speculated that he couldn't hold on for long, but the result was exactly the opposite. However, Lin Sun did consume a lot of energy at this time. After the battle, he had consumed at least 70% of his spiritual energy. This was not a problem. Before the battle for Providence, the Immortal Mountain would send a divine rain, which could restore all the strength of the practitioners who succeeded in guarding the mountain in an instant. Before the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, Xing Jinzi from the Dachenlin Temple in the Sacred Hermit Land was right. In this world, not everyone is qualified to be called a heavenly son. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with contemplation. After this battle, he increasingly agreed with Xing Jinzi's view. In the previous battle, although it was extremely fierce, he didn't use the fury of Yazi or fighting saint method from beginning to end, including silent chop, life and death chop, and other killing moves. But in such a case, the heavenly son of a sect still couldn't be defeated. How could he be called a heavenly son? It was laughable. At the same time, Lin Sun's cognition of the extreme Tao also had a different understanding. In the past, he had always regarded the extreme Tao as the strongest Tao, which was rare since ancient times. Even in the ancient times, it was extremely rare. But now it seemed that there was obviously a misunderstanding in his cognition.